Salam alaikum, everybody. How are you doing? Welcome, the Godfather himself, guys. I was working on that since like almost 2 months. It's very hard to catch this man,
Mm,
really. Welcome, Rollo. Thank you for
yeah.
accepting the invitation.
Mhm. Thank you for having me. Is it Salam alaikum? Is that what it's is that the how you
Salam alaikum. Yeah, that's a
Salam
greeting.
alaikum?
Yeah,
Okay. I got to remember that.
yeah, yeah. That's the greeting.
Mhm,
Okay. We have a real hot topic today, which is hypergamy in depth, because everybody know what is hypergamy.
mhm,
Everybody heard what is alpha seed beta need and the socioeconomic status and blah, 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 blah to the rest of it.
mhm,
But we will go a little bit more deep with the Godfather himself today. And the main three sub topic today is the first one is the alpha seed beta need side of it.
mhm,
The next one is the Madonna whore complex. The third one gonna be the balance between the alpha and beta.
mhm.
In the beginning, like if you've been living under a rock and you don't know who's this guy is, this guy. Sorry. I'm gonna give you like a small introduction.
Sure.
Okay, so Rollo Tomassi is the author of the series of books called The Rational Male, and I highly recommend you guys to read it. You will find all the links, by the way, for his blog, channel, and the Amazon page, including the four books in the description. I highly recommend you guys for who doesn't know a lot of things about the manosphere in general, how it does created, like, and if you want to go in deep understanding the main red pill concepts and to make sense for every single one of them, this is the guy that you should read for. So getting back a little bit, Rolo, like from the beginning, and SoSwap 2001 platform, you started the thing there, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll tell you what's funny is as far as my background is concerned, I haven't thought about SoSwap in a long time. I got started. I've been doing this for now 20 years.
Mhm.
So I actually I can trace my earliest post on SoSwap back to 2002, and I had already gotten into what was known then as the seduction community. And later on, there were several forums at that time. I remember, the
Mhm.
internet wasn't what it is today, and social
Yeah.
media certainly wasn't what it is today. And we didn't have YouTube, and well, it was in its most rudimentary form, I guess.
Mhm.
We Facebook didn't even start till 2006, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
we had forums back then, and there were seduction forums. So you had alt fast seduction, you had Venusian arts, which was like mystery method kind of stuff, and then there was a forum called SoSwaf, and that was the forum that I was a part of, which is still there today and still active and still
Mhm.
going. So that's a testament to its longevity, I guess. And so I just became really involved with the conversations that were going there, and really that's all I did for right up until about 2010. So about 8 years. Now I had actually the forum that's up right now has been up since 2002, but there was a forum that came before it, and then it changed hands. So technically, it's been around a little bit longer than that, but I just rounded off to 2002. So the
In
conversation
2010, you started your blog, right?
2011 is when the blog began, and that was because people kept saying, really need to start a blog, Rollo. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
I was resistant to it too at the time. I didn't want to do a blog because I was more interested in the conversations that we were having. It was better to have a collective experience, and that's how I was
Mhm.
getting and generating ideas. And I earned a reputation, I guess, on SoSuave over the course of like 8 years. And again, it was just this on again, off again. I was writing all the time, anyways, because I was finishing up my degrees, and I had to do a lot of writing as it was. And there was a lot of crossover between what I was studying and in school at the time. And I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts and I have a BA in psychology. And I double
Mhm.
majored because initially I just wanted to be able to understand my clients a little bit better, as a graphic designer and an art director and stuff. But then that kind of snowballed into an interest in doing peer counseling. And I was the guy that got to do the sort of unsexy work with guys who were anywhere between like with a 45 to 65-year-old demographic of men, which nobody wanted to touch, right? It was all, well, we talk about relationships and girls and stuff like that. And I had these guys coming up to me and saying, like just with tears in their eyes about, how to fix their marriages and stuff. And so a lot of the stuff that I was seeing in the seduction communities at that time and the conversations we were having had a lot of crossover. And so I decided that I was going to, at the very least, double major until I realized that you can't really make a living off of psychology unless you have a doctorate degree. But it was still good, and I learned behaviorism is what my primary focus.
Behavioral psychology.
Yeah, behavioral psychology, and with a focus on personality studies because of all of that. And so that kind of set me off on the course of creating a blog. So it went from forums to doing my blog. My blog is in its 10th year now, almost 11th year now. And I did that because people really wanted to have all these ideas and the best like posts from the So Suave sort of collected in one place. And so I took those and I expanded upon the ideas, and then those essays for the first 2 years, I think, of the blog all became chapters for the first book, which was published in 2013. And it's a really different experience for me because I had to go from being a forum post writer to being a blog essayist to being an author in
That's
writing.
Huge transformation.
Yeah, and so that was my education really was in writing was that process. And then I thought that the first book was going to be the only book I ever wrote. Right. So that's people ask you, how come the text is so small and it's cram packed full of stuff. I think Rich Cooper will tell you it's like drinking from a fire hose. And it is, because I probably crammed about like 3 books into one book because I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this because everybody's asking me to do a book. And then of course what happens is right after that, people say, well, I want the Kindle book. I'm like, because I don't want a real book. I want a Kindle reader. I'm like, okay, fine. So I converted it. And then they say, where's the Audible? I didn't know how to do an Audible. So then I got Sam Botta to do the read for me. And the rest is kind of history, because after that, I had people asking me about specifics. And then those specifics turned into...
Does Tom Likas radio show inspired you to do that?
Yes, absolutely. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think Tom has ever written a book, but I was a big. I'll tell you my earliest influences as far as writing what I do was. Tom Likas for sure. I used to be a big fan of his terrestrial radio show when he was on the radio. He kind of turned into somebody different after that, but I was a big fan. His delivery was kind of like it was like a professional wrestler, right? It was it was very much entertaining. But there was sort of these kernels of truth that people could sort of get behind. And so that's why he developed such a huge following as a result of that, because he was talking about things that it was impolite to talk about. And right now, I don't think a Tom Likas could really exist on commercial radio anymore, just, the societal conditions as it is. But he a lot of the stuff, if nothing else, he prompted me to think about the ideas and the questions and the things that he was, laughingly, putting out there. And then at that same time, I'm also in the seduction community and I'm reading. I'm not like trying to learn how to do game to like go out in the clubs or whatever. And I'm my background as far as my career is concerned is I've been an art director, a graphic designer. I've been a media producer. I've been a brand manager. I've worn a lot of hats in my illustrious career, at least for casino marketing. And for gaming in the terms of like actual gambling machines, like I used to work for a company called IGT, which is International Game Technologies. And I also I worked for an import exporter of wine and spirits. And so most of my career has been in some form of vice. Everything except for pornography I probably have done. And so I learned a lot as a result of that, because I was in the clubs and I was sort of this student of human nature. And I would watch people, like I had to be sober like the whole time I'm watching at a martini.
You have to concentrate, yeah.
And I'm working, right? That's my job. I'm here to work. But as I'm working, I'm making mental notes and I'm saying, well, why did he do this? And why did she do that? I'm watching like people hook up right in front of me at the clubs and everything. And I'm like
the circus, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, well, it's like I'm like the Diane Fossey of the red pill. You know, it's like gorillas in the mist are like taking, watching the behavior of the animals
Take
out there.
notes.
Yeah, and so that led to a lot of the posts and a lot of observations, and it led to other questions. And then again, like I said certainly the first book and every introduction after that is I connect dots, and that was me connecting dots back in the day. And so that's how I came to sort of be interested in doing what I do. And here we are 20 years later. And I've got 4 books, and I've got a 5th one should be coming out the end of this month if I can swing it. Certainly by the first week of February. It's going to depend on how long it takes to get approved through Amazon. But I self-published.
The name of it. Like, can you give us
the working title right now is the Player's Handbook, and it's going to be a definitive guide to game, and I mean that in the sense that it's going to be it's not a how-to book, it's a why it works book. And like what is the what are the psychological principles behind like why on earth would anybody think a neg hit would work? Would anybody think that amuse mastery works? Why, all these old school game
technique. Why does it work?
Why does that work? Why is that, or why should it work, or why does it work for you and not for some other guy, right? So what are the underlying principles behind that? And it just gets into the nuts and bolts of intersexual dynamics and the social dynamics between men and women when it comes to family formation, which essentially that's what it is. Because I think a lot of people get lost in the weeds when it comes to like, oh, it's pickup artists or it's game, or you're just trying to manipulate these girls into bed. Well, that's the proximate the proximate cause. The ultimate cause is family formation, right? How do people get together? Well, right now they're meeting online, and they hook up, and if it works out, it works out, and if not, it doesn't. And so I think that what the ultimate goal, anyways, or the ultimate end of that is 2 people coming together, reproducing, having a family, and whatever else. So it starts, with game, for sure it does. But where does it go from there? And that's really what the main focus of the book is going to be on.
Yeah, great. Okay, regarding the Manosphere, like I heard you once saying it started to formulate in an online as a sphere around 2013. Like this name, which is the Manosphere, including everyone, like the Red Pillars, MGTOW, all kind of
sub-tribes
and sub-tribes. Yeah. It is formulated actually as in 2013. Like, am I right?
I think what we know of as the Manosphere was right around 2012, 2013. It was, technically you could say the Manosphere goes all the way back to like 2001 or so, like when the pickup artist and the seduction community it was really a seduction community then. Nobody called it the Manosphere. It only really, that name only really came into vogue, I think, right around like 2013. And then that was associated with a lot of different things. So MRAs, like men's rights activists, were part of the Manosphere. MGTOW was part of the Manosphere. MGTOW, by the way, sort of came out of the MRAs at that time. It was there. I think of MGTOWs as sort of like MRA separatists, and then you have like the guys who are like dedicated to like game and PUA, and that was a section of it for sure. And then from that you got Black Pill. Black Pill was really also an offshoot, I think, of MGTOW, but it was also an offshoot of this group of guys who are the true forced loneliness guys. But that name didn't really roll off the tongue quite as well as like Black Pill. So the more nihilistic, despondent side of MGTOW, I think, really kind of branched off into what we think of as the Black Pill right now. So there's that. And then there's tradcons that are traditional conservatives who saw where all the men were going because they were leaving the church. And they're like, well, where did all the guys go? And so they see these guys in the Manosphere or Red Pill, whatever, and they make it their sort of personal quest to make that their ministry. And so then you've got like these guys who are sort of like God Pill, White Pill. You got the guys who are traditional conservatives, more or less. And the thing about most of every little kind of sub tribe is they pick and pull the parts of Red Pill praxology that fits in with like their lifestyle or their ideology or what they their values, what they grew up with, and they go, oh yeah, Red Pill has always been about I don't know, whatever my religion is, or whatever my politics are, or whatever my belief set happens to be. And then they pick and pull the elements of that and they go, yeah, see, here it is, black and white. But then they ignore the stuff that's a little bit more unflattering or contradicts what they have to say.
Yeah, yeah. We have a question here.
Mhm.
Rollo, is your book, The Rational Male, based on experience only or academic knowledge and research?
I usually make all of my books about as academic and as observational and objective as I possibly can. I mention
Mm,
that in every introduction of my books. Everything I put on there is I try to make things about nuts and bolts. It's not gonna. I'm not gonna say that I don't use other people's experiences. I have used
mm,
my experiences, but I only pepper them in when I think that an illustration is in order. But
mm,
for instance, I was just finishing up a chapter on dread and what the heck was it? Oh, well, part of it was dread, and part of it was like ovulatory shift as well. So I
mm,
use studies that reinforce or back up red pill concepts.
mm,
So when we, like, for instance, we're going to talk about hypergamy here in a second. Hypergamy really is a word or a term that was used, or I should say, was coined back in like the 50s or the 60s. And
mm.
that was from a sociology study, and it was of Hindu culture in India. And it
Yeah.
was they, of course, the researchers noted that it was common for young women to want to marry out of that caste system that they happened to be in. So if
Mm,
they were in a lower caste, they wanted to marry into a higher caste because that was the only path really to socioeconomic, advancement
mm.
within the Indian caste system at that time, and they called it hypergamy.
Yeah,
And
I tracked it down actually. Like, sorry for interrupting you. I tracked it down actually to back to the Hindu scriptures in
Mhm,
Sanskritic language
mhm,
that was back to the 12th or the 13th century. It is that long. Like
mhm.
people, humanity knows that
As
behavior.
millions. Yes.
Yeah, like
Mhm,
around eight centuries ago, around 8 centuries, 7 centuries ago.
mhm. Yeah. Well, the term, anyways, the English term, or the westernized term of hypergamy, really came from studies or research on the caste culture of India at that time, which was, like I think it was like late 50s, early 60s.
Mm,
And so it's been around for a while, and it wasn't even really a psychological term until like evolutionary psychology became a thing. And that really, like, even Evo Psych didn't really take off until I don't know, the early 90s, maybe the mid 90s, as a sort of a sub category, I think, of psychology.
mm,
And so interestingly enough, I came across the term myself in the seduction community. And the problem that I had with hypergamy is that it didn't account for both sides of women's mating strategy, which
mm,
of course is alpha seed and beta need. I'll be as nice. I'll say it the nice way on your on your channel here, but it's the idea that women are looking for two kinds of benefits. One is sort of biological genetic benefits. They're looking for the guy who is stronger, smarter, faster, willing to kick ass, dominant for sure.
mm,
There's a lot of traits that reinforce an arousal state in women when they see a
mm,
muscular guy. When a guy's got a V taper, he's got six pack abs, he's got a strong jawline, indication of strong indication of testosterone, like high testosterone, and then dominance characteristics. So it's not just about physique, but it's also about attitude, and it's also about the congruency between the look and what they're getting, as far what a woman expects to get, I should say,
mm.
from a guy who looks that way. Like
Yeah.
a guy who looks like The Rock or Jason Momoa. There is a certain set of characteristics, like personality characteristics, that we expect from a guy who's 6'3", jacked, and has that classic Greco-Roman physique.
Mm,
When that doesn't occur, then you have incongruency. So if that guy happens to be gay, then you have this incongruency of what's expected versus what the guy looks like. So
mm,
there is a set of characteristics of personality, archetypes that go along with that are expected. That's part of sort of the alpha seed side of hypergamy. And
mm,
then the beta need side of hypergamy exists around the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps are parental investment, protection, and provisioning.
mm,
And we tend to look at those as sort of the beta bucks side of hypergamy. Um, alpha seed, beta need, that's the beta need side. So there's a long-term security need for women. And that's what most researchers and most psychologists, and if you like listen to say like someone like Dr. Jordan Peterson or Brett Weinstein or
Socioeconomic status.
yes, they tend to look for, they base all, they think that it's all that women's only mating strategy is based on nothing but status, on nothing but provisioning, on nothing but the beta bucks side of hypergamy, which is patently false. And I think we now in the 21st century in 2022 are exposed to just how false that is. Now, I think it's equally as misguided to think that it's only about alpha seed, or it's only about beta need. But we tend to focus primarily on just the beta need because it's more flattering to female nature. It's more like it's easy to say, well, women are looking for a guy who's a made man and he's saved his money and he's ready to
take responsibility.
Take responsibility, and that's what makes a man attractive. Yeah, but what makes a man arousing is he looks like Jason Momoa. So we tend to focus only on one side of hypergamy, to the exception of the other. Now, like I said before, you'll get these guys in the black pill communities and sort of like the nihilist doomers who want to say that it's only looks. That's the only thing that matters. He just has to look like Jason Momoa and nothing else matters.
Yeah, and the black pill doomers.
In a sense, when it comes to arousal, if all it was about was arousal, they would be right. But when it comes to like I said, having a family, family formation, if it was just about sex, if it was just about hooking up, if it was just about the proximate cause, like I said before, they'd be right. Looks, money, status, LMS, right? Looks, money, status. Well, if you're a looks maxer and looks is all that matters, then I would argue that that's equally as unhealthy as say what. Like someone like Dr. Jordan Peterson only focuses on the status side of things and that's the only thing that matters. And it's like, no, that's not. Both of those things have to be congruent with one another so that you have sort of like ideally anyways, this total package. The problem is most guys don't have the ability to be one or they only have the ability to be one or the other and at certain times of their lives. So being that total package is really kind of like, who are you doing it for, first of all? And then second of all, it's like, why would that matter to you in the first place? Like, why is it so important for you to be both of these things? Is it because you want to be that way? Is a high value man the best combination of both of those? Or is a high value man one or the other? And that's where we kind of get into the weeds, I think, in
that's the complex.
That's the conflict right now, because if you're a guy who has made it, if you're a guy who does the work, right? If you're a guy who's got the 6-pack abs and a 6-figure income and everything else, the common frustration for those guys is they can't find a woman who is worth their time, is worthwhile, because by the time that guy achieves all of that, it doesn't make much sense for him to really pursue like the average woman today. And then you've got the guys who haven't maximized one or those others. Like I think it was John from Modern Life Dating has summed it up as money, muscles, and game. Make money, build muscles, and learn game. And if you're deficient in one of those areas, you tend to max out in another area. So if you don't have a lot, I did exactly this through my 20s, right? Is I didn't have any money, but boy, did I ever get laid, because I maxed out looks and I maxed out talent and I maxed out my rock star 20s as best I could. And that got me laid, but it didn't get me from point A to point B. It didn't get me into a family. It didn't get me into a building something in the long term. But I was able to get laid and I was able to max out that side of it. Now, the other guys, maybe he's not the best looking guy in the world. Maybe he's a little chubby. Those guys tend to max out when it comes to status and money and provisioning capabilities. And then in between both of those is game, and having the congruency between those two and being able to be, a smooth talker, first of all, but also to understand social dynamics and understand your nature as a man and understand women's nature and be able to leverage that to your best effect.
Great. I'm always explaining hypergamy to the new guys, to the Manosphere. When somebody asks me the question that I answered like 2,217 times until now.
I see it right here in the chat right now. What does hypergamy mean?
Yeah. So I'm always telling them it is five factor. It is
Mhm,
basically five factor, which is the social capabilities, the social network. That's one. The second one is the economic capabilities, which is the money.
mhm,
The third one is the frame, how the man is handling the woman character-wise.
mhm,
The fourth one is the game. Like, can he play game? Do you have some mystery in his character? Like, can he seduce her?
mhm,
Like in one word. And the fifth one is the look. Like, is he
mhm,
tall? Does he have wide shoulder, wide
mhm.
jaw? Like, is he's jacked as we say? Does he have
Jacked and
chest?
juicy. Yeah.
Yeah, jacked and juicy.
Jacked and
So it
juicy.
is. So it is a combination of five factors, like for me.
Mhm,
And but don't you think that even Dr. Jordan Peterson, when he says the socioeconomic status,
mhm,
in order to be able to be good and socially, and to be successful financially, you have to adapt some like some alpha characteristics, leadership features.
mhm,
Don't you think that that includes or to some degree it includes some leadership characteristics to be
mhm,
in socioeconomic high status in the social hierarchy?
mhm.
Don't you think so?
The dominance hierarchy, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so like of those five characteristics that you're talking about. Now, first of all, let me just see if I can make this as like coherent and concise as possible, because people know
Hmm.
I ramble for quite a bit. But when it comes to hypergamy, hypergamy is women's innate mating strategy. If you take them completely out of society, you put them back into the hunter-gatherer societies of the old day, in the ancestral past, and sub-Saharan African, savannas back 1,000 years ago. Hypergamy is simply put as women are looking for the bigger and better deal. They're always looking for quality over quantity. Men, on the other hand, are looking for unlimited access to unlimited sexuality because it serves our biological best interest when it comes to reproduction. For women, it's quality. They're looking for it's K selection for women versus R selection for men. Men want to spread the seed. Women have to be the filter and say, no, you're not. I'm not breeding with you, but I will breed with you. Let's start a family. Blah blah blah. So there's a lot of criteria when we talk about how women have different like prerequisites for men. Like, he's got to be good looking, he's got to make money, he's got to love his mom, he's got to be the same religion as me, he's got to like dogs, he's got to want kids, he's got to like Disneyland. I don't know, whatever it is, like down the list of things. There's a laundry list of prerequisites for women to find the guy who meets the best of those criteria, and those items are prioritized depending on how well that woman is able to sort of get those particular things. So if she's a very attractive woman, she's a very hot, beautiful woman, looks might be at the top of that list, or it might not, depending on what phase of maturity, like how old is she,
Yeah.
right? She might have different needs. And so those those articles on that list don't fall off of that list, but they do get reprioritized throughout a
Yeah.
woman's life. So when a woman's, say, like 23 years old, those priorities are in one set way, but when she gets to be 33 years old, those priorities sort of shift in order of importance. And so essentially what hypergamy is it's not a straitjacket. You have to emphasize that right now. And the reason why I've always said that is because of exactly what I just said. Those priorities shift as a woman ages and what becomes more important. So for instance, when a woman is between the ages of 18 and 28 years old, she is at the peak of her sexual agency, and she is more in a powerful position when it comes to sexual selection. So guys come to her, right? A lot of, when we talk about how these women have like these overblown egos today, those egos are usually developed between the ages of 18 and 28. And because they believe that that's, this is what I'm entitled to, and especially in a society that tells them that they are entitled to that.
Yeah.
And so then later on, they get a rude awakening right around 29 to 31 years old, and they are less able to command the same attention that they did between 28 and 18 and 28. Problem is if a woman lives to be, let's just say, 90 or 100 years old, she has a 10-year window in her lifespan to get the guy who's going to be a good looking dude, and he's going to be a guy who's committed to her and is parentally invested, is going to protect her and provide for her and her babies. And that need lasts a lot longer than 18 to 28.
Yeah.
So she's looking for this long-term security that she can only really optimize during that 10-year window. That's where hypergamy is very, very important for women. They're looking for a guy who is at what they believe is their own sexual market value or above. They're always looking for a better than deserved situation. So if she's a 7, she's looking for a guy who's at least a 7, and if he's a 7, then she's looking for a guy who's an 8 after that. If she'll jump ship to find a guy who's an 8. Is that going to happen automatically? No, it's circumstantial. And also, the older she gets, the less able she is to keep that guy. So, for example, if she's a 7 and she gets with a guy who's a 7, she gets to be 33. Now she's a 6 and he becomes an 8 because he's developing into his own personal potential. That shifts the game a little bit, and she's more invested in a guy because the sexual market value dynamic has altered. That's why I say hypergamy is not a straitjacket, because there are variables that change that along the way. It's not set in stone. And so all these guys who are looks maxers who think it's only about looks, it's only about looks. Well, you've never been in a relationship long enough to figure out that hypergamy, that dynamic shifts during a woman's life. So that's number one. The other thing is men do not have an attraction floor. Women do have an attraction floor. So when I say, if a woman is a 7, she's looking for a 7 or above. She's looking for a guy who's a 7, 8, 9. She's not looking for a 6. That's not in the cards. I mean, unless that's a very rich 6, and that's a temporary situation until she's got what she needs and she's looking for an 8. For men, we don't have attraction floors. I mean, we like to think we have standards, but nobody's ugly after 2 a.m. So we will easily drop our standards for women if we get sexual access. That's how you get guys who are, chubby chasers or, slump busting or whatever else it is, or we're more than willing to compromise our sort of sexual standards if it means access, especially for guys who are unaccustomed to sexual access. So if you're in a state of sexual scarcity, you're probably more likely to say, you know what, I know I'm a 6 and she's a 5, but I was drunk, she was cute, and one thing led to another. And so there's that attitude there. And I think what really hypergamy boils down to is women are interested in quality, and they're looking for a guy who is a better than earned situation for herself. That also plays into women's egos. It's also an association saying, I'm the kind of girl who can get this. I know I'm a 7, got an 8, and it's like, haha, see, I'm all that. So that's whether that's inside here or it's outside here, it doesn't make any difference. It's still an ego affirmation, and that's intimately attached to hypergamy as well. So we've got that going on. And then, so I think the second thing you were asking was like alphas and what makes a guy alpha.
The socioeconomic status, like generally who's really good and have really good socioeconomic status, it usually will come with certain characteristics such as like leadership features and some alpha characteristics, let's say. Like you have to get some of these characteristics to reach that level on the social dominance hierarchy.
Okay, that's first of all, from that respect, if you're going to define alpha by the beta bucks side of hypergamy, then I would agree. You're correct. It's the guy who commands a lot of resources, the guy who has a lot of territory. Maybe he's got houses, maybe he represents a really good opportunity for long-term security. So if we're just talking about that side, then I would agree with that. But here's how I sort of define alpha. And I think a lot of guys get hung up on what are known as sociosexual hierarchies. And that means like alpha, beta, delta, gamma, omega. I'm a sigma male. That's part of all that stuff too. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't have value or merit. I've done videos on the sociosexual hierarchies. When I talk about alpha, I don't talk about it in terms of you're a silverback gorilla. Like men are silverback gorillas, right? Or you're a wolf on the Arctic tundra. That's just stop it with that. When I try to make this as clear as I can every time I talk about designations of alpha and beta. Alpha and beta are placeholder terms. They are abstract concepts so that we can use those concepts to look at bigger ideas. So if I say alpha, it's not that I think of, well, he's an alpha guy and he's got, he's jacked and juicy and he's, the star of the football. He's a quarterback in the football team. And I think people get this sort of overblown caricature of that ideal or that archetype. And I understand why that is, because especially in Western culture, we see it all the time. So let me ask you this: who is the alpha in this of these two characters? Who is the alpha? Okay, Superman or Batman? Who's the alpha?
Superman.
Superman is the alpha. Okay, so why do you say Superman is the alpha?
Because the Batman have soft side, like his character in the movie. Yeah.
Say I would argue that both are alpha. Contextually, they are alpha. And okay, so who's the alpha in this? Captain America or Iron Man? Who's the alpha?
None of them.
You don't think either of those guys are alpha?
No.
Okay, so those are both,
let me
both alpha archetypes. So
okay,
go ahead.
let me get back a little bit. I didn't mean by the socioeconomic status, the status itself. Like I didn't mean the money, the property, or these things. But usually, who got like a great capability for socially and from economic wise, he got some characteristics and features in his character himself to be ass kicker, for example, such as Pena. I don't know if you know Dan Pena, which is the self-made billionaire. Yeah, he's an ass kicker. He's really tough guy. So to reach that level, to be so successful or so good at money and socially, you have to adapt in the way up some characteristics, which is used to be, as we see, alpha characteristics. And I don't mean the money itself. I don't mean the numbers or the properties. I mean the features in his character. Like,
okay.
Don't you think so?
Yeah. Okay. So what you're discussing is there's actually two different things there. One of them is the dominance hierarchy, and another one, and I really wish Jordan Peterson will go back to this definition because he doesn't call it this anymore, but it's a dominance hierarchy versus the competency hierarchy. Like, what are you good at? What are you competent at versus how commanding are you? Like, are you the guy that other men want to be and other women want to have sex with? Is that what you are? And if that's so, then how did you become the guy that other men want to be? And if so, how did you become the guy that other women want to have sex with? So when I was giving you the examples of like Iron Man and Captain America, those are two alpha concepts, or Superman and Batman. Okay. Superman is the good guy, right? Truth, justice, and the American way. He's, he doesn't drink and he drinks milk and he's strong and he's still Superman and he still looks good and women still want to get with him, but they want to get with him for a different reason than they want to get with Batman. Batman is the Dark Knight. He's brooding. He's the vigilante. He's, he does his own, he lives by his own rules, and he's still a millionaire playboy, like Bruce Wayne. He still has funds. He still has means, but he has a different mentality. The same thing is true between, say, Captain America, who is the squeaky clean kind of like almost naive guy, but still, because he lives by his principles and he lives by virtue, by virtues and stuff like that, he's alpha in that sense. He still looks good. Girls want to get with him, right? But then you have Iron Man, who is this maverick, right? He's this guy who's an inventor. Again, has lots of money, just like Bruce Wayne, and is an inventor, but he lives by his own rules. So he's like sort of this scoundrel alpha versus the guy who is this pro-social alpha, who is the leader of industry, who is the guy who's volunteers at his church or the soup line or whatever. He's still got this really good character. He's really good bet for long-term security. But then there's the bad boy alpha who, the fantasy, of course, is to turn into Pepper Potts or whoever else and like tame Tony Stark and make that alpha into the guy who has some sort of virtue. And so he's really a good guy at heart, that kind of stuff. And those are two different alpha characters or alpha character. There's others, of course, too, but those are two, like, sort of, I want to say almost like diametrically opposed in some way, alpha characteristics. And so when we look at the guy who has the dark triad traits and he's alpha, and then we have another guy who is less on the dark triad scale there, and he's alpha, we tend to look at the guy who we think the most of. So when if I happen to be very virtuous, or I believe in monogamy and God and country and whatever else, I'm going to point to the guy. I'm going to point to Superman. I'm going to point to Captain America. And women, depending on where they are in that, like I was saying before, the priority list, depending where they are in life, they're going to say, I really need a Captain America now at 33 years old. When they're 23, they're looking for Tony Stark. He's still an alpha. He's still got means, but he's the sort of the Dark Knight alpha. He's Batman.
Yeah.
And I think
Of the
that's
alpha spectrum, let's say.
yes, that's where we get confused. And it goes back to what you were talking about before, which is a dominance hierarchy versus a competence hierarchy as well. So when we say, well, that's not very alpha of you, like, I hate the fact that we're using this as sort of like this qualifier for whether or not you like fit in with my tribe now, right? Well, you're not very alpha. That wasn't very alpha of you to say this about such and such or do this about such and such. And it's like, that's all that is just a litmus test for me, for your approval. So if you're going to say, well, Rollo's not alpha because X, Y, and Z, it's like, well, that alpha is not what you think. You're just saying I suck. That's how you. Why don't you just say that? It's easier than saying, you're not very alpha. But we've come to the point where we don't know what those definitions are anymore. We don't know how to qualify what is alpha and what's not. So in my very first book, I said this, and I've got several chapters in the first book from back in 2013, The Origin of Alpha, for example. Alpha is a mindset. It is not a demographic. Yeah. So there are plenty of
totally
alphas.
Agree.
There are plenty of alphas who are leaders of industry, plenty of alphas who are, good with kids. There are plenty of alphas who leaders at your church or leaders at, wherever you are, and they fit ideologically into what your sort of caricature is of that alpha. And then there's plenty of alphas in prison right now for killing somebody, for being a drug dealer or a gang leader of some sort. Warlords, tribal warlords throughout the Middle East. Those are very alpha men, antisocial, but they're very alpha. Genghis Khan. I think he was on the shit list of a lot of people back when he was around. But very alpha enough that one in every 200 men today on planet Earth is a genetic descendant of Genghis Khan. So was he alpha? Well, I mean, by that definition, definitely dominant, definitely competent, definitely prolific when it came to breeding. I'm not saying all the women wanted to get with him, but he certainly got with them enough to have many children. And so what I argue these days is that it's not so much about what your stature is or your status is, although status comes from this. It is the mindset, is the head. It's it's your mindset rather than a demographic. So, for instance, was Napoleon Bonaparte, was he an alpha? Because he's very little short guy, but he was the emperor of France during his time. Of
course, he conquered half the world.
Brilliant general and kicking ass in strategy. Is he alpha or is he beta? And I always love those comparisons where and you probably don't know, maybe you don't know who I'm talking about, but I use for example, I use Lemmy Kilmister, who's now dead, but he was the bass player for Motorhead. Not the best looking guy in the world, but definitely alpha, and definitely somebody who I would say is sort of like the dark triad brooding kind of guy who's like, you know what, I was dealt a bad hand in life, but I'm going to make the most of that hand. And he did. And so is it it kind of depends on what's the criteria, what makes you alpha and what doesn't. Are you looking for a guy who's Captain America, or is Iron Man your idealized alpha?
Yeah. By the way, do you know that there is a Muslim leader who outperformed Genghis Khan?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that because
Richard know about him. His name is Sultan Ismail. If you want to search, in English, search for Ismail the Bloodthirst.
Okay.
Ismail the Bloodthirst. He got 1,050 children from his own directly. That's what they can count.
Oh, you know what? I heard that stat in, I believe it was The Ape That Understood the Universe by Steve Stuart Williams. I think he used that as the guy who was the most prolific man.
Yeah. He was ruling the area of North Africa, which is around Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria, in that side. He he was ruling that side in like
Hmm.
few hundred years ago. Yeah.
I got to look that up. I have heard that name before, like I said, in the book by Steve Stewart Williams. But I'll just let me tag something onto the end of that. Powerful men throughout history, whether it's
Yeah.
Ismail the Bloodthirsty or Vlad the Impaler or Genghis Khan or whatever, tribal chieftains, dynastic emperors of China, you name the powerful man, the Caesars of Greece. Powerful men have been defined by three things. Okay. It is resources above and beyond everything, is having the resources, having territory, expanding territory,
Yeah.
and then having exclusive access to many women, to being able to reproduce with those women. So that therefore you get like hope I'm saying this right, harem,
Harem.
having harem of women. So even if it's like the guy who's in the tribal wetlands of the Amazon basin or something like that, that guy who is the witch doctor, that guy who is the tribal leader, he has access to women that are kept in isolation, so nobody else can breed with them, and he's the only one that gets to do that. China, you've got the emperor in the Forbidden City. He's guarded by eunuchs who have their junk cut off because they don't want any, they still got to guard the girls, but they don't want to have any risk of them actually going in there and reproducing with those girls. And then of course it's got to be territory. It's got to have the muscle to back it up, of course, to defend that territory. And you've got to have resources. And then you also have exclusive access to breeding rights to virginic, and usually it was virgins, right?
Yeah.
So that you knew that the kid was yours, because parental certainty, under the paternity is that on an evolutionary perspective, paternity is the number one biggest concern of men, because up until we had like the 70s, when we had genetic testing and DNA testing to know that the kid is yours, men had to usually take them, unless it was very obvious. You had to take the word of the woman that it was concealed reproduction, it was concealed estrus, it was concealed certainly menstruation, but you didn't know that the kid was yours. That's why I had marriage. Like, I promise to only have sex with you, and I promise to only, these babies are going to just be your babies. That's how imperative it is to sort of human males. But powerful men had access to those three things, and it's cross-cultural, cross-history.
Yeah. But by the way, do you know that Christianity does not have a script that prohibit polygyny, which is multi-wives, does not have a straight script in the Bible that says you can't have multi-women. That's the act of the church, by the way.
Yeah, most likely, because they standardize on socially enforced monogamy around the time of was Constantinople. I forget the name of it, Nicaea, I think, right around there. And right up to that point, I actually make that point in my fourth book, Religion. The idea of marriage is more of a social or a cultural norm rather than the religion sort of adapts to whatever is like the social norm when it comes to marriage. There's lots of different, like you could marry your brother's wife if he passed away, and that was okay, and you bring him in because there was an expectation, especially under
to take care of his children,
to take care of the children, right? So you could marry, or like in the Old Testament, you had Abrahamic religions for sure. You had Abraham, and he has 2 wives, and he's got God knows how many concubines or whatever, and that was good. Like, God was cool with that, right? That's just how it works. And so later on, in the New Testament, and really sort of after the Common Era where we're at right now, it's like, well, okay, monogamy is the thing, because monogamy serves Western culture for sure better, as like more men have more access to women rather than if it's, you'll see, like, it comes into sort of the cultural narrative and our mythology at that time too. So it's they lived happily ever after, or she's my one true love, or it's the soulmate myth, as I talk about in my first book. The reason why we have that the idea that soulmate, one-itis, that we develop one-itis, is a mythology that was promoted to ensure that there's only one man and one woman. It was like, oh, Adam and Eve, right? One man, one woman. That's just the way it was in the garden, and that's the way it ought to be. Well, that's not how it was throughout the Old Testament. And honestly, I don't think it really makes much difference, religiously speaking, whether Father Abraham could have, 2 wives and God knows how many concubines, and now we can only have, depending on what your cultural, affiliation is, you can only get one man, one woman. So it's really the religion kind of follows what is most advantageous
Yeah.
at that in society at that particular time.
But like the main point is they do not have solid script to support that claim.
Mhm.
As
Yeah,
like for example in Islam, the script is so solid. Like we discussed that before, if you remember
yeah,
on
yeah.
that show. The script is so solid. Like if an Islamic scholar, even if he was like very famous, very well known, stand up and says like it is one man, one woman,
Mhm.
all Muslim in the planet will tell him, no, that's bullshit because it's mentioned in the Quran. You
Mhm.
can have up to four wives. So I will take your opinion, throw it in the garbage
Mhm.
because he's opposing the script itself.
Mhm.
If he got a new opinion and he can support it with the script, like people will, okay, like that makes sense because the script support what you say.
Mhm.
But as you said yourself, it is socially constructed and supported narrative. It is not based
Right.
on the Christian
Well,
script.
let me ask you this, because I think I had this discussion with Abu American when I was doing research
Yeah.
for the fourth book. And when I was doing the sections on Islam, Abu American Craig told me that it was optional. Like polygamy is in modern times, anyways, is an option. So it's like, yeah, one man, one woman. If that's the way you're at, then that's cool, right? If you want to have up to four wives, then that's like the limit. But are there particular limitations on like
Concubines.
what are the, well, not concubines so much, but like what are the conditions that a man has to meet to get another wife? Is there like some sort of precondition in Islam where the guy has to say, okay, you can have another wife, but you have to do these things first before you can have that other wife?
Yeah. There is no. Okay, it's mentioned in a hadith of Prophet Muhammad says, "Man istata'a al-ba'a," which is who got this ba'a. It's called, the translation of it is the capability, and the capability have two factor here, which is the financial capability, like management wise, you can manage a new home, like you have the capability to
So
spend on the family.
resources. Mhm.
Yeah. And you have the sexual capabilities, like are you good, like can you handle two, three, four women, can you do that? If you have the capabilities, like you can have the second, third, fourth. And regarding the concubines, is it's unlimited, like
Mhm.
it is totally unlimited. There is some khalifas of Muslims back days. They used to have 200, 800, 500, 300. So
Mhm.
it is unlimited from the concubine wise.
Mhm.
As wife is four, and there is a condition. It's not condition, it is almost like an advice not to be punished, or a recommendation from God, which is in khashitum an la ta'dilu. If you was afraid that you can't do justice to all women, like
Mhm.
take yourself a one, like if you can't handle it.
Right.
So
Which most
the one will be good.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's it. By the way,
let
it's
me
not
let
it's
me
not
ask
so
you.
so popular. It's not so popular among the Arab world. It's less than 10%
I figured as
in
much.
most
Yeah,
countries.
yeah. Craig was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Like you can have up to four, but he's like most guys only have one wife. Is there? Let me. I got two questions for you now. Here I am doing the
Yeah, yeah,
interviewing.
yeah. Go ahead.
I got two questions for you. The first one is this: is there an expectation amongst, like, say, Muslim women that a guy, like a powerful guy, a guy who's an alpha male, Muslim man, that he is going to have concubines, that he's going to have sex outside of the marriage and perhaps produce children outside of the marriage, but not marry those women? Is that an expectation, would you say, especially amongst like sort of modern Muslims right now?
Yeah. Okay. So the capability is a great thing. Most of females, if you want to say about the among the Arab world here, the majority is conservative.
Hmm.
So having sex outside of the marriage is not an expected or accepted thing. It's
Hmm.
not expected because most of decent men will never do it.
Hmm.
Uh,
Is it
mo-
haram?
It is haram. It is a big sin. Like it is
Mhm,
adultery. It's
mhm,
adultery. It's like in Judaism and Christianity. It's adultery. Like you
mhm,
can't have sex outside of the marriage. But all Muslim females, they know deep down that he's allowed to have another sexual partner,
mhm,
like to have another woman. So is it so common to the degree that every single female will expect her husband to have a second wife? No, as I told you, it's between 5% and 10%. And like if you go back 30 or 40 years, you will find it was more common. If you go back more, you will find it's more common. So but nowadays it is not practiced as usual. So females in general do not expect it, but they know deep down that he can.
mhm. Now,
So
is polygamy okay? So, and I got clarification on this from Craig. He says, it's not like you have four wives and you're having like four way. You're not having orgies with all of them. It's like you're having like
yeah, you can't.
four separate marriages, right? You have four families, four separate marriages, and it's not like they're all getting together and having a good time, right? So I get that, and I think a lot of people kind of figure, oh, when you say polygamy or especially today, right?
Polygyny is more accurate,
Yeah.
Rollo. Polygyny is more accurate because it's
Okay.
closed from woman's side, it's open from the man's side.
From the man side, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
So my next question is this: so is that in the Quran or is that part of the Hadith? Is that like just part of the rules set, or is it actually scriptural
it
that you
is.
can
It
have?
is. It is in the Quran
Mhm.
and supported by a hadith.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
My question, the reason why I'm asking that is because this is what I've heard. Okay.
yeah.
Is that it didn't used to be four, right? It used to be one, but then as cultural things changed or like warfare happened, like, well, we need to, we had so many men die that we need women to, we need more women per every Muslim man right now so that we can sort of reproduce more prolifically, let's just say. And you have the prescription is, of course, you can have one wife or you can have up to four. And that it used to be that it was only one man, one woman. And now as a result of cultural or warfare or whatever happening, that changed as a result of the social order changing, and therefore now it's okay to have four. Am I accurate in that?
No, actually, it was the opposite. Before Islam, like I'm too good at history. Like I tracked that down, especially
Mhm,
for people who attack Islam for such like with this naive argument that Islam made up the multi. No, no, no. It was very common prior to Islam, but it was like there is no limit prior to Islam. Like men in almost all of civilization have no limits of wives.
mhm,
Like before Islam, they used to have 80, 100, or 80 or 100 or 200 or 2000 if he was like a powerful empire
mhm,
wife. So Islam reduced it to only four.
mhm,
Is there any plus? Yeah, in wars, like if you can take if you got some concubines, yeah, that's acceptable. But Islam reduced the wife as a wife
mhm.
to four. Before it, Arab used to have
Oh, it's a
10,
more, and then they
15.
brought it down. They say, let's scale that back a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That
Because
makes sense.
that was not productive on sociology on social side. Like
Mhm,
imagine two guys in the tribe can have 200 women each, and like 199 guy cannot have anyone.
yeah.
So that's not productive.
Yeah, that's definitely a source of like chaos, yeah,
Yeah,
discord amongst the tribe, I'm sure. And then it's a last thing here. I have actually one more question, but like I think it was Kahir T says concubines meant side piece, and it's an obligation to feed and clothe concubines. Yeah, I understand that.
yeah.
Also, I think one of the things that sort of gets lost,
And
and I
her sons belong to you,
yeah,
lineage
yeah,
wise.
yeah, exactly.
They will follow your name.
But they're also your responsibility, correct?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
you have to take
definitely.
it's a religious proscription that you are responsible for those four wives, right? That's why
Yeah,
they say if you can't take care of these women, then you shouldn't be having these women in the first place. And
exactly.
I again in my fourth book, when I was doing the parts on Islam, I was trying to make a case for why it is that patriarchy, what we like to think of as sort of like this tyranny, tyrannical patriarchy, was actually a more balanced system than what
Yeah.
we have right now, which is gynocentrism, which is like feminism, which is the feminine imperative right now, because it only focuses on the needs of one sex, whereas patriarchy, at least in an idealized state, in a religious state, also imply men have the authority, absolutely, but they also had responsibility, and
Mm.
you will see that all certainly all across Abrahamic religions. You'll see that in Judaism, in Christianity, and in Islam. It
Mm.
is you have there's male headship. The father is the head of the house. The man will rule over the woman. In
Yeah.
Adam and Eve kind of thing, and that will and women are supposed to be submissive to by religions to be submissive to the man. Well, the
Yeah.
reason for that is because that man also had the responsibility to take care of that woman, to love that woman, to take care of the children, to be to all the four
Protect
P's,
them.
or the three P's, right? Parental investment, provisioning, and protection of that woman. That was what his responsibilities were, and I think that kind of gets lost when we're trying to find. And I don't care what religion it is. If you're going to come down on patriarchy and say, well, it's tyrannical and we should all be egalitarian, we should all be even Steven, that really comes from a female way of thinking when it comes to organizing society and when it comes to modifying and rewriting religion. And so that's
Mm.
why we throw out all that scripture that says, oh, men are the head of the house, or men have headship over the woman, because they want to have that sort of egalitarian thing there. But the problem is when you do that, you remove the authority from that guy. And when you remove authority from him and you keep that responsibility for him, and you remove his authority to actually affect that responsibility, that's when you have problems.
Yeah. There is two main point here. Uh, Islam held women held men accountable, like to a higher standard than female.
Mhm. But it
I'll
also
give you.
gave them the authority to
Yeah.
actually measure up to that standard, right?
Of course. I'm talking opposing that Islam is favoring man.
Mhm.
Like, does he favor man and tell man you have to die to protect women? Like,
Mhm.
how
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
favoring man and pushing him to death? No,
right. Altruism.
that does not make sense.
Mhm.
But by the way, do you know that that information that incapable man is not allowed to get married and reproduce in Islam?
Oh, really?
Yeah,
None,
if
I
you
didn't
don't
know
have
that.
the capability, you can't.
You're not supposed to like stay
Yeah,
out of
you
the gene
can't.
pool.
Yeah, you can't.
Wow. Mhm.
You have to be capable, or build yourself to be capable. Then
Mhm.
you have the right to get married, have children. Like,
Mhm.
so you have to be a real man, like
Real G.
to have
Yeah.
real G, to have the
Yeah.
right to reproduce. Not every man. If it's favor man, it will favor man in
Mhm.
all cases. But
Mhm.
there is a certain type of man that he deserve to be treated good.
Mhm.
So
Can I ask
uh,
you? Can I ask you one more question here? Because you and I
yeah,
got.
just to clear the
Okay.
concubine. Yeah,
Sure.
the concubine thing. I have to clarify this because
Mhm.
a lot of Islam haters, for example, will attack Islam for this, that concubine is forced to have sex. I don't
Mhm.
want to say the word itself. At
Mhm.
forced
Forced
to have sex,
copulation.
and that's, yeah, and that's so untrue, because there's two type of concubine. Like, even in the war, when you held a concubine from the other army,
Mhm.
if you kept her, you're not supposed to kill her as a female. It's prohibited to kill a non-fighting any non-fighting citizen,
Mhm.
especially women, children, old men, and the priests, and
Mhm.
the religious men.
Mhm.
So you're not supposed to kill these categories unless they was fighting you directly. So if you took a concubine, you have to give her two option, and that's what used to happen. There's two option of concubine for a service, and concubine for pleasure.
Mhm.
So men, like Muslim warriors, when they got concubines, they used to give them option, like, there's two option: I'll keep you alive, but there's two option, which is the service
Mhm.
or the pleasure. If she's If she chose the service, he will never touch her sexually, never ever touch her sexually. But
Mm-hmm.
she have to serve in the home. She have to clean, to cook, and
Right.
to
Mm-hmm.
feed for
The
example,
help.
the
Mm-hmm.
horses, and take care of the home. That's for service. If she chose the pleasure, which she have more benefits like better clothes and other stuff, she's not serving.
Mm-hmm.
The concubine for service, they will do the services for her. They will take care
So
of
she
her.
enters. So she becomes the harem, part of the harem. In that,
She becomes a part of the harem, which is
okay.
they call it jawari. So she chose to be for pleasure, or she can choose to be for service. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
against her will. So she
So he's
chose
given
that.
the choice to say, "Hey, you can do one of
Yeah,
these, one or the other," right? Yeah.
yeah,
I wanted to also ask. I know in my fourth book in religion, I talk about prearranged marriages, and prearranged marriages are not, believe it or not, are not exclusive just to Muslim culture. I mean, you can go and
yeah,
find it in India. You can find it, actually, you can find it in Hasidic cultures as well. You know, Old Testament Judaism as well.
yeah,
Um, I understand sort of the mechanics behind. I mean, I understand the evolutionary purpose for that. If I could, I've made this case. It's like if I had the option to say, you know, I'm going to give my daughter away to the guy that I think is probably the best fit for her, I would probably do that. Now that seems horribly tyrannical and horribly like oppressive right now under, you know, Western egalitarian understandings of like how men and women ought to be. And so, you know, it's like I'm not going to step in, but I trust that I raised my daughter well enough that she knows a good guy when she sees one, right? So, and then the custom of like, and this is a Western culture, but
mm,
the custom of the groom or the potential, you know, suitor to ask the father, it was the father's name to give his daughter in marriage to her. That was asking permission to marry them. That's how you get things like eloping versus you know, a traditional marriage that had a function to it. It wasn't just like the good old days and I'm just going to be polite about things. There was a reason for that,
mm,
because what you're doing is you're blending two families. You're saying, okay, you want to know that this guy he's an ass kicker and he's an alpha guy and he comes from a good family. You want to know it's very important, I think, anyways, from a tribalistic understanding or tribalistic sense, for certainly for men, and but men who have an interest in their own like genetic propagation, right? I'm going to give my hand in marriage to this, or my daughter's hand in marriage to this guy right here. I want to know that he comes from a good family, that that they share my views, that they're the same, you know, because I don't want to be, when you marry two people, you're marrying two families together. And I don't think
yeah,
we really think about those things today. And I think certainly in Islamic culture, as well as more traditional, it doesn't matter what it is, more traditionalist cultures, I think there's still that consideration. But
mm,
because we live in a gynocentric social order, we don't have the authority as men to say, no, you can't marry him. No, I
ah,
forbid it, right? Like, and you probably, and like Muslim men probably could do that. They're like, nope, you ain't marrying that guy. Mm-mm.
yeah.
But
It's a condition.
yeah, it's a condition. So I understand the purpose behind like prearranged marriages. Now it seems horribly, you know, barbaric today, but I do understand why that was a cultural thing. Now you and I were in a Twitter thread, and I forget who this chick's name was, but she wanted me to
She's
grill
Arabic
you.
feminist.
Yeah, that's a feminist. She wanted me to grill you on like marrying a 12-year-old girl to an old man, and
That's not
rearranging
happening.
that marriage. Like, can you
Yeah,
explain that right now so we can clear this bullshit up?
yeah. She's she's referring to the age marriage for female in Islam or in Muslim country. By the way, in 95 to 98% of the Muslim countries, it is 18. It like in some countries it can be 17 or 16,
Mhm.
but it is not 7 or 9 like a real kid. No. So in the vast majority of Arabic country, it is 18. There is some exceptions to the rule, which is under certain circumstances, like in Jordan, she
Mhm.
can get married at 16, but her father should approve that, and the judge himself have to look into the uh, case by case wise.
Mhm.
You got me? Case
Yeah.
by case wise, and the judge have to approve it. And there is some rule like the man can't be so old. Like if he's 60 or 50, want to
Mm,
marry a 16, the judge will no,
mm,
no, no. But if she's 16 and 19, 19-year-old guy
mm,
want to get married, and like they both have a great let's say understanding, and both of their family are supporting the marriage, so it's 2 years or 3 years, 5 years different, that will
mm.
be okay, that will be acceptable. But she's referring to in some countries that have no real
Child
rules,
brides. Yeah.
no real rules,
Mm,
like Yemen in these days, like that they're having the war, and like there's no real civilians ruling.
mhm,
So it can have some exceptions to as
mm,
13-year-old girl to marry a 50-year-old guy. So
mm,
that can happen, but
mhm.
it's generally very exceptional cases in exceptional countries. That's it.
Yeah.
Regarding
The reason I wanted to ask you about that is
mm,
because this is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because the reason I didn't respond to that is because don't have any knowledge of this. So I'm not
mm,
like, I'm not a, certainly not I'm not a biblical scholar. I'm certainly not a Quranic
yeah,
scholar either. So I don't know what the rules and regulations are of this, but to my knowledge, what I was, I'm still curious, right? So I'm going to look this up. To my knowledge, like the tradition or let's just say the proscription again, um,
mm,
of an older guy marrying, say, a 12 or a 14-year-old girl. Those instances happen not because it's like child trafficking or it's sexual trafficking. It's because that girl, her best chance for survival was to be with
mm,
the guy who was older because he has resources and territory and he can protect her and like turn her into a wife once she reaches the age of maturity. Yes, but it's not like
mm,
he's going, okay, I'm gonna go and pick up all the, a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old, and I'm gonna keep them
mm,
in my harem until they get old enough for me to marry them. It was a sort of this, and again, this is what I was able to find out, is sort of this vestige of, again, the culture that was going on at the time. So if you've got a guy and all the fighting age men in an Islamic tribe, for example, are all killed off and there's only 40-year-old guys left and very young women, well, you got to have something that says, well, we got to, have this guy be able to take care of them in a legalistic sense. And so therefore that's still around today, even though it might not necessarily be something that is, it might be frowned upon. It might be something
yeah,
that's like has a lot of regulations that we don't understand because we simply don't want to take the time to actually go
yeah.
and do homework and figure it out.
Yeah, that was the legal side. What I mentioned from Islamic point of view, like there is only very few conditions for the marriage, which is the maturity, like she have to be adult, like
Mhm,
after puberty, we mean
mhm,
the capability. That's a condition, and the consent, the consent of her and her father. So she have to be adult, and she have to be capable. For example, there's a girl who's 15, but she have defects in her body, she's incapable of reproducing.
mhm,
She have to have capability and consent of her and her father. That's from Islamic
mhm,
wise. But is that practiced in Islamic countries? No, it is
mhm,
not. It is at least like 15, 16, 17, 18, as like the rest of the world, like in Texas, by the way, you can, like you can marry a girl which is 15 plus.
mhm.
So
You can match with the minor.
that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay in Texas, but like if somebody did it in Saudi Arabia, no, these Muslims, it is okay, it is okay, like in most of the world, it is not limited to 18 and one
Mhm,
day. No, in
yeah.
some countries it's 17, some states it is 16, like it is that's it
Mm.
around the world.
I,
It's
I
not something
I think that, and
specific
I,
to
I
Islam.
hear what you're saying too. It's like, yeah, in some states, the age of consent is different than like other states as well. Like, I think we tend to think of like the age of consent being like 18 years old. Really, it's a state by state thing. Usually, it's around 16, I think. But again, it depends on the
13,
ages of.
14 also.
Yes, yes, exactly. Well, it depends. I think it kind of depends on the age of the person who is the older party and the younger party as well. So if you've got like a 19-year-old guy and he's with a 16-year-old girl, that's a different situation than you've got a 14-year-old boy and a 26-year-old teacher who like has sex with her student in class or whatever, develops this relationship. That's technically meets the standard for statutory rape,
Yeah.
So it just
They will
again,
punish her for 6 months. Don't worry.
right? Yeah, exactly. I slapped. Well, the reason why I wanted to ask you those questions is because I knew where you were going to go with them is that in all of those instances, when it comes to like prearranged marriages, when it comes to marrying the 16-year-old, the 14-year-old, whatever it is, under those particular circumstances, the reason why women get really upset about that is because it removes choice. It removes hypergamous choice. And that is like, I describe that as the existential fear of women, is to have men
Control
actually
it.
have a say in reproduction, to actually be the one that says, you know what, I'm going to step in as a man and I am going to, and then of course the more brutal sense is like forced copulation, right? But then by prescription, by society, by religion, by whatever, by legislation, whatever, I think one of the primary goals of feminism has been really since the beginning of it, but like certainly since the last 60 years in militant feminism, is to remove any possible way that men can be involved in the reproductive process. And so when I say, it's a nice fantasy or a nice tradition for a guy to ask my permission to marry my daughter, there used to be a function to that. Now it's just this really quaint kind of tradition kind of thing. But the reason why it's been reduced to that is because for the last 60 years, anything that even makes that thought pop into a woman's head saying, well, how dare they impinge upon my reproductive rights or my choice or this, whatever. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be a compromise between men and women, right? I'll tell you what, I'm going to take care of you. We're living in a patriarchal society, but my responsibility for the authority that I get means that if I'm going to marry you, I'm going to get sexual access and the kid's got to be mine. But in return, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to cherish you. All the wedding vows, right? To love, to honor, respect, in sickness and health, and forsaking all others. I'm going to obey those vows. But in return, here's the deal that I get. The kids have to be mine. And and I get sexual access, and you're into me so much that you really want to have sex with me all the time. And we're a good mate and a good matching. But what happens is that's why women kind of bristle at like traditional marriage, because it implies, that's why they want to write their own vows right now for like, marriage vows, was because it implies that guy has any like 1% of control over that woman's sexual selectivity. And that is in a gynocentric social order, that is the cardinal sin, is to presume that a man might have some sort of seat at the table when it comes to reproduction.
Yeah. How dare you have anything to say about my reproductive rights?
Well, that's why women hate game. That's why they hated PUAs. That's why, because anything that sort of hacks the system, that gets around that feminine intuition is what we usually call it, but it's like the hypergamous filter. We're talking about hypergamy, right?
Yeah.
Wants to be, there's nothing that is more self-satisfying for women than to believe that she's figured a guy out based on that feminine intuition. Oh, I figured him out. I know what he's really about. It's this very satisfying, I should say, process of women trying to figure out if you're the real deal or not. And then once they realize that and they get with you, and then, suddenly they fall in love with you, they're having sex with you, having babies with you, whatever. But it starts with that process. And when women want that process to be as easy as possible, they don't want to have even the slightest amount of a chance that they can't figure that out on their own, even though most of them can.
I want to clarify this and talk about it, but we have some
super chats.
Some super chats here. Yeah, I guess this is for you. Most thing that gravitate. Can you read it?
The most thing that gravitates me towards your book is that it quite closely to what Prophet Muhammad said, which is not try to change their nature as women and just accept what they are. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's interesting because that reflects sort of this red pill maxim, which is I repeat this all the time, is like the red pill doesn't exist so that you will hate women, because that's the
yeah.
first. Oh, it sounds like you guys really really hate women. No, the
Hmm.
red pill doesn't exist so you'll hate women. It's so that you won't hate women for what they can never be to you. And boy, man, once I say that, it just like silence in the room.
Yeah. We have Melvin here inviting you to accept
To
Islam.
accept
You
Islam.
you won't you won't regret it.
You're not the first one to ask me, Mel. I do have my Quran over here. I
That's
had
good.
to do a lot of research for book 3, and I think it might have been Craig who sent me that Quran.
Hmm. That's
I'm
okay.
not there
That's
yet, but I do
interesting.
understand. I definitely see, especially the cultural advantages for it. Oh, Torsha's here. Hey, Torsha, don't worry. I'll be the one who decides whether or not that guy is worth marrying or not. I'll be your daddy. I'll be the one who decides who you can get with and who you can't.
We have your girlfriend
Either
here
that or
in
you
the
can be one
chat.
of my concubines. Maybe I should. Maybe I should convert it, turn her into a concubine.
Please, Rollo, come on to a word that's
Is
equitable
equitable
between.
between us and you, yes, and we will not worship except Allah, and not associate anything with Him, and not to take one another as lords instead of Allah. Thank
Yeah, he's quoting a verse in Quran actually.
you. Mhm.
Please enter Islam, beloved Rollo. Like he's so insisting.
Everybody
Melvin.
really wants to convert me. Yes.
Yeah,
The thing
yeah,
is, I'll tell you, I whenever people ask me like, what religion are you? I say, well, read the book, because the last chapter in my book explains sort of my religious beliefs,
yeah.
anyways.
A lot of people think that you're atheist, and
Oh,
we will come to that. He's not atheist, guys.
no, I don't know
Yeah,
where I fit, but yeah, I'm not atheist.
yeah. Okay, let me clarify this regarding the arranged marriage.
Mhm.
Arranged marriage is it's not supposed to be arranged by the way that people understand. From the guy's side, like I have some friends who got arranged marriage, but it is not arranged as they think, because
Mhm.
in certain age, for example, the guy he want to get married, so he'll tell his mom that I'm now, like I'm trying to get married.
Mhm.
So she will start to recommend him. It is like Facebook suggestions, by the way.
Oh, really?
It is the Facebook
All
suggestions,
right,
like
I got
back
one
back
for you.
days. Yeah, yeah. It is a recommendation from the mother, for example, the auntie, the sister. She have a friend or other or member of close family, neighbor, or something. Like she will tell him, because we do not interact with women on a high level usually. That's very traditional. Like we do not interact with a lot of women, because it is prohibited, except to certain degree.
Mhm.
Like it is not okay to interact with a lot of stranger women on daily basis. No. So you need some help, you need some recommendation. Usually guys will ask his mom, his auntie, his grandma, or because women, especially Arabic women, they have great connections. They're like octopus. They know everyone everywhere. Like
Yeah.
they,
Well,
they,
women have
they,
great
they they perform networks,
in
yeah,
general. Yeah.
among families and friends. So she know at least like 10 to 20 good recommendation for you. But
Mhm.
it's up to you as a guy. Like
Mhm.
she would recommend you this girl is 20 years old, she's this
Mhm.
tall, blah 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 blah. You can see her, like we can arrange for a meeting. You will see
Mhm.
her, talk to her. Like, is she's okay? No, she's not. Like, for example, she's fat. Okay, she will recommend you another one.
Mhm.
So it is like more like a suggestion or recommendation. It's not I got you this girl and you have to
Here's
marry
what?
her now.
Here she's coming in. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, mom, I'm
Mhm.
so okay, okay. No, it is not like that.
Mhm.
From the girl side, it is not purely arranged also. Like a man can, for example, saw your daughter in the college, and
Mhm.
he asked like, who's this girl? Like, I want to meet her family or something.
Mhm.
So it can happen without a pre-connection, like
Mhm.
family blood connection or a relative. But he will come anyway to meet her father and to tell him that I'm really interested to be the husband of your
Is there a preferred
of your
way?
girl.
Is there a preferred way?
we call it in Arabic يجب عليه أن يأتي من الباب. You have to come from the door, not
Mhm.
from the window. From the door, that it's the legitimate way, like the more respected way, which is to knock on the door, to meet her father or the oldest brother, like to tell
Mhm.
him. That is very direct way and very respected from among all the society. Like this man is legit. Like he's not playing. Like he
Right.
he he, fo- he
Qualified.
followed the
And
rules.
other
Yeah,
people have figured it out for you, right? I think actually, and honestly, I think that's almost like a bet, especially today. I think that's almost a better way of going about it now,
yeah,
because it include really that's what women do anyways through social networks. Like I tell guys this all the time when it comes to game, you're not gaming that one girl, you're gaming all of her friends on Instagram, all of her family, her mom, her sister, her whoever she's talking about you to. And usually it's that net, like you just said, that network of women, because they have greater social networks than men do. And but it's not just that one. It's just not you just talking to her and she's using that judgment. She's using social proof. She's using pre-selection, and that pre-selection is so broad and so vast right now, but it's almost entirely, almost exclusively based in female perception of that guy. And so that guy has to qualify to her entire female social network. Whereas, for instance, in Muslim societies, they also have to have that social proof that woman has, that Muslim woman has to also come from their father, has to come
mhm,
from male members of that
yeah,
community, so that social network as well. So it's like, no, don't marry him. He's a bum. He's never going to amount to anything. Look at him. He's not, I'm a guy. Let me tell you what this guy's about. Most women will never, Western women who are non-Muslim will never take a man's advice about another man, because they think
yeah,
that it's like in some way like trying to flex on that guy, or they think it's in some way trying to step in and really amog that girl, that guy with that girl. And I think there's again, what we were talking about before is it removes that just the slightest amount of sexual selectivity there. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I very few women seek out the perception or the estimate of their boyfriends from dad, from brother, from best friend, like from men, or even people at their church or their whatever, their mosque, their temple, whatever it is. Very few women look to the social proof of other men to get affirmation and
yeah. You
confirmation
know,
of this
you,
quality.
you know that there is two side of this, which is like the Islamic, the Shari'i side, which is the Islamic rules for it, which is supported by hadith, which is sahih, authentic hadith from Prophet Muhammad. He says, "La nikah bila walay," that there is no marriage. Nikah is marriage.
Mhm.
There is no marriage without the wali, which is the male guardian, accepting
Mhm.
this. So there's no marriage. It is not considered Islamic marriage without the male guardian acceptance.
Mhm.
Without his blessing, it's not marriage at all. It's considered adultery.
Mhm.
So you can't, as a female, you can't you can't really get married Islamically. You can do it like legally in the court, but that does not benefit you like in the judgment day. The
Mhm.
court does not benefit you in the judgment day. Islamic way, your father, for example, he's dead. Your uncle, your oldest brother, like male brother,
Mhm.
he have to consent. And the main reason, the main idea, we believe that, and that's true, we believe that women are incapable of choosing a good man on her
Mhm.
own.
Mhm.
She's incapable. She will follow her hormones. Like she will
Mhm.
follow her, for
Emotions.
example, a 19-year-old will follow the alpha seed side.
Mhm.
So, but a man, like I'm not really attracted, and I recognize a
Mhm.
serious fucker when I see him. Like I'll
Mhm.
say no, no, no. Even if she's attracted to a high degree, to no, my dad, I love him. No, I said no, and it is no. So with the male masculine authority, uh, it is a big help. And I always I always explain that to female. Arabic and non-Arabic female, it's
Mm,
a great idea to consider relative male advices,
mhm.
like on the guy who's you're marrying, because we do not, because we men, we recognize each other better than you as
Game
female.
recognizes game.
Of,
Yes, yes, it
of
does.
course.
Mhm.
Of course. So it is a great idea to do that, like as female, whoever is
Mhm.
listening.
But
That's the main
you
idea.
do realize, like, so, like, and I agree with you, but but in a gynocentric social order, to say you need permission from dad or brother or from a male member of your tribe, your family, your religion, whatever, your ideology, whatever it is, to actually marry this guy, and I have the authority to say no, you can't do that. That right there goes, like, it's diametrically
Crazy.
opposed to a gynocentric social order,
Yeah.
diametrically. And why is that? Because it removes choice, it removes sexual selection from that woman. So I try to make this case as often as I can when I talk about how the, like, hormonal birth control, like the pill,
Mm,
changed society from 1965 on. It's no it's no coincidence that everything that followed in the wake of that, like, no fault divorce, the rise in abortion, the rise in or I should say the plummeting marriage rate, all of the things that we're, what the rise in, prescription antidepressants for women, yeah, that we can look and we can trace them all the way back to 1965, where
mm,
at that point we essentially gave all control, all selectivity over to one sex. And they say, okay, ladies, you are now in charge of who you get to marry, who you're going to decide, because you're going to follow your heart, because your heart's never wrong. And you'll notice that the narrative of romance and of, like, connection and intimacy, it all changed right around that time to sort of coincide with the idea that emotion should in some way supersede, like, rationality. And so
mm,
what I would argue is this, and this aligns, I think, with Islam and a lot of, certainly, Abrahamic religions as well, is that when you are consulting that male member of that tribe, when you're consulting, I think the idea that women have is that by removing that choice, they are essentially having a child, or they're getting into a relationship that is not of their choosing, no matter how it's done, by inch or by mile. But for that guy to actually step in, whether it's the dad or the uncle or the brother or whatever the male member of the family is the voice of reason, like you just said. And
mm.
in some cases, yes, that can, I mean this in an ideal sense. I don't mean that there aren't, like, guys who will, marry off their girls for political reasons. We've seen that throughout history, right?
Yeah,
Obviously that.
definitely.
I'm not talking about royalty or
Mm.
nobility or forming, like, aristocratic alliances like that. I'm talking about, like, people who worked on farms. Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
average people.
the peasants who worked the land still had that same tradition. So it's not
Mm,
just about, like, political, movements as a result of marriage. Not that didn't happen. It did. But it happened as a result of the fact that women had to ask permission of their male members of their family to actually, blend two other families, to bring those two families together in marriage, because the kids are both the part of one family, the father's family and the mother's family. And as you were saying, and I think you said this was in the Quran, is that women are going to make those decisions based on emotion. They're going to base on whatever their most immediate feeling is. Whereas if they consult a man who sort of has this bird's eye view of what's going on, and he's going to think about things in pragmatic terms, in the
yeah.
terms of, I don't want to be married to that family because they're all fuck ups over there.
Mm,
I don't want to be involved in that, and I don't want my family, and I don't want your sister and your mother and your grandmother and everybody else to be involved with these people, because they're not. I don't want my family to be associated or a part of that family as well, by marriage, by children, and everything else that comes along with that. So I know you love him, and I know your heart is in the right place, but that's probably not the best thing for you. How dare you say something like that to me? Because women have the authority to say yes or no, and men have zero authority. That's one of the reasons why I keep saying men have 100% responsibility and 0% authority. Right there, black and white. That's what that is. Men do not have the authority now, really, and at least in Western societies. Perhaps maybe it's different in Muslim societies, but
yeah,
men don't have the authority to say, no, you can't marry that guy. And
yeah.
it's in your best interest that you don't, because I have a pragmatic, rational, reasonable reason for why I'm saying that it's probably not a good idea.
Okay, there is there is two side of this
Mhm.
from the male guardian, which is the father usually. There is the family side, and there is the guy side himself, the man side himself,
Mhm.
which is the family. As you know, like tribes is a big thing among the Arabic society.
Mhm.
So we know tribes, and tribes itself has characteristics like tracking this tribe history, like this tribe known as generous people, this tribe known as great warriors, this tribe so there's a type of pride among every tribe.
Mhm.
So the family side, yeah, is one thing, and the ability to recognize the characteristics and features of the man himself, the male guardian, like a 50-year-old guy like in your age, have better insight than like 20 years old female.
Yeah. Are you listening, Torsia? Come on. Are you listening to
Yeah.
this guy right now? Okay. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, so you're probably like a teenager or like very young girl, you know nothing in life. This man, like as we say in
I've
Arabic,
been through that portion of life already, and I know what to expect.
yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Like he've been in ups and downs, and he have long experience. He's a man himself, and he recognize a good man when he see one.
Mhm.
So, but we have to take under consideration, Rolo, that it is not a tyrannical way. Why? Because you need the consent of the girl herself,
Mhm.
even if she was 16. Like she have to say yes. She can recommend a guy for her father, and the father can recommend a guy for her, but both have to have consent on it.
Mhm.
And let me put this straight. The father wants the best for his child. Like he will never push her for a bad guy. Like
Mhm.
99% of his choices, it will be he will be very careful because he love his daughter so much. Like you have a daughter, and
Yes,
like you know
I
what I'm talking about.
completely understand. I completely relate to that.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I've said that before in the past. Is like I don't want my daughter marrying a bum. I don't want her to marry
Mhm.
somebody that I think can't provide, protect, and be parentally invested in a relationship and a marriage with my daughter. Neither do I want her to get with a guy who doesn't go work out and isn't on top of his game all the time too. I want the best for my daughter. I want her to get with the best of the best. And if I can be instrumental in that choice, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah,
And
it's what's interesting to me is like, and this is not just even so much a Muslim thing. It's like just a male thing.
yeah.
Is there's a lot of tradition cross culturally speaking where this has been the case. Like if you look at the Scottish Highlands, for example, the clans of the Scottish Highlands, they had almost an identical arrangement where it's like you had to go and ask for, the clan member, like the father of the clan or whatever. Like I want to, join Clan McLennan or something like that, and so therefore it's like I'm going to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. It's not necessarily. What's interesting to me is cross culturally that seemed like the best way to do things. It doesn't matter whether you're Christian or you're in the Scottish Highlands or you're like, in Denmark or you're in feudal Japan. Same thing. It was it seemed like the most pragmatic way to go about forming families and everything else. And now suddenly, just in the last 60 years, we throw all that out the window.
Mm.
And look, and where are we as a result of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lost generation.
Mhm.
You saw
Well,
that
exactly. And
last statistic.
again, removing authority and still expecting old school, old order responsibility from men.
Yeah, you saw that last statistic about United Kingdom, which is 50% of females 30 and over are childless.
Mhm. And will continue, and that's going up too. By the way, I saw that in the UK. That was the stats that in fact, I think I reposted that on Twitter. Um, that's in the UK. If you look at stats for the United States and other westernized countries, it's very close, very
Yeah,
similar. And I
yeah.
and I always, in fact, I pegged this in again, once again in book 4. The average age of first marriage for men in the United States is 29.7, and for women it's like 28.9, like almost 29 years old, almost
Mm,
exactly where I say it's going to be as a
mm.
result of the epiphany phase. And who knows? Oh, that guy Rollo finally called something right, right? No, I've been calling it right for a long time, but here's the evidence, and now we can
Yeah,
see what's going on. And then I quote this with Aaron Clary all the time: is the rise of the she economy is they're predicting or projecting, anyways. Morgan Stanley is projecting that
Yeah.
women between the prime working age, women between 25 and 44 or 45 years old, by 2030, 45% of them will be single and childless.
Single and childless. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. I know that. I know that I addressed it in
Maybe patriarchy wasn't
She
such a
Economy.
bad idea after all.
They will find that. They will find out by themselves. Last
Mhm.
question for you, Rolo.
Mhm.
I've asked this one before, but since I came into the contact with Red Pill, I hate women. Do you
Mhm.
have any tips? Like, I believe
Mhm.
that this is the same question that Rolo answered like 200 times, but
Yeah,
like
well,
I
okay.
heard before.
So once again, the red pill doesn't exist so you will hate women. It exists so you won't hate women for what they can't be to you, and that's really where that kind of I think angst comes from when guys say, "Oh, I really don't like women. I'm turning into a misogynist as a result of all this stuff." And it's like, no, you're turning into a misogynist, or you're getting sort of I don't even say misogyny. I want to say you're resentful of the
Yeah,
fact that you're now you have this knowledge and now you have this understanding of the game that you're really in right now, and you don't know how to make it work for you. I have it's a chapter actually in the first book. It's called The Bitter Taste of the Red Pill.
mm,
And I have stated this before. I'll say it again. There's no such thing as the black pill. There is only the red pill, and your inability or ability to accept what it shows to you and to
mm,
use it and leverage it to your best advantage. Right now, when you say I'm resentful and bitter, I hate women, blah blah blah, it's usually because you don't understand, you don't see the opportunities that are present, and you don't know how to capitalize upon those opportunities. You don't know how to creatively solve your discontent. Because really what that is, when you say, oh, I don't like women anymore, blah, 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 because I think they're all bitches and hoes and ratchet girls on Fresh and Fit, right? No, they're not. But that perception of them comes from the fact that you've been educated and you understand the nature of women and the nature of yourself as a man, the game that you're actually in, and you don't know how to go about playing the game better. And that's
yeah,
really what it comes down to. So it's impossible for me to say like, well, how do I do this? How do I make myself better? I don't know, man, because I don't know you. I can give you the tools so that you can figure it out on your own. Or if I can analyze your situation and give you some tips, or I can help you in any way, I'm more than happy to do that. And I think pretty much anybody in the red pill who is positive about it and has optimistic about living in a red pill paradigm will say the same thing. But it's the bitterness of the bitter taste of the red pill comes from your inability to understand how you can use that information to your best advantage. That's really all it is. Once you figure that out, you'll love women because you're not trying to turn them into something that they can never be to you anymore.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and you'll, in fact, as a matter of fact, you will love women deeper as a result of that. Even like what was the guy saying in the Quran? That's what it says, right? I mean, it's like
In
understanding.
hadith actually it says in hadith actually it says women are like a bend rib which is around your chest, the bend rib. Don't try to straighten it up because it
Mhm,
will you will broke it.
mhm,
That's the actual words. Do not
mhm,
try to straighten it up. Do not try to change it. Understand it as it is
mhm.
because you will broke it.
Right. There's I think I hope I'm quoting the right person. I think it was Aristotle who said, even the wisest of men do not try to teach a crab to walk straight. Because a crab
Mm,
always walks sideways, right? Because that's what a crab does, right? The wisest of men will not try to teach a crab to walk straight.
mm.
And I think that's again, I'm using allegory, and I know that's illegal to use on the internet these days because everybody's literal. But what that really means, I'll explain it to you. What that means is accept the nature, accept what she is, and work within that, or don't. Like you have two choices: you work within that paradigm, or you don't, and you just say, "Screw it, I'm out. I'm not going to bother with anything." Fine, if that's where you're going to go extinct. Please do. But if you're going to play the game, if you're going to look for those opportunities, if you want to make the best of that, you want to creatively solve your discontent, you have to accept the nature of the crab, that it only walks sideways. You have to say, okay, great. Now I know this. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to work within that. That's really the history of like men trying to solve their reproductive problems. We try to adapt to what we see is the nature of women, and we try to make ourselves more attractive, or we try to, or like, well, I've said this before, is like the history of civilization. the greatest accomplishments of civilization is not alpha males going and creating the next great invention. It's beta males trying to solve their reproductive problem. So the problem isn't with women. The problem is with your lack of vision. It's your lack of inventiveness. It's the lack of your ability to adapt. So either play the game and play it well and kick ass and don't wish it were easier, wish you were better, or just you're done. Just go live in a shack somewhere and finish out your days and your genetic line goes extinct.
Yeah, it is more like playing chess, what I say
Yeah.
always to guys. Like if you don't like one of the rules in the chess, you do not change the rules. You're getting better as using the rules. That's how you deal with women. Like if you're playing chess, I hate the king because he can go one step every time. Like no, you can't do that. You can't change it. That's the rules. So if you understand the rules and you found out that it is a little bit difficult, it means you have to train, be better yourself, and learn better strategies to be a good or a better player. So you can change the rules. You can be better
Right.
as using the rules to win.
Mhm. Yes,
That-
because I'll tell you what's interesting is like that's the male perspective. By the way, I should
Mm,
add that because we're interested in dominance hierarchies, we're interested in competence hierarchies as well. So it's like I don't want to make a too close a distinction between dominance and competence hierarchies, but those are part of men's burden of performance. We all, as a man, I respect you according to your respectability. What did
mm,
you do that earns my respect? Right? What have you done in your life? What knowledge do you have? What accomplishments have you had? Those are just visual representations. Really, those are cues for respectability in a man. And we have gendered concepts of respect when it comes for women and when it comes for men. For
yeah,
men must become, women just are. And as part of that becoming, it is also an issue of respectability. Is that man doing something that I respect? Is he competent and is he dominant in that particular area of his life? That right there makes us more competitive. It makes us it's the source of really of creating businesses, of creative endeavors, of you name the invention, name the civilization, name the benefits of that, and I can point it right back to dominance hierarchies and competence hierarchies inside of in men. The
mm,
problem that comes up is in a gynocentric social order, everybody's supposed to be equal, right? It's all
mm,
communitarianism, it's all socialism, it's all, we're gonna put women in. Everybody gets a chance to be the leader today, right? And it's like that's not what benefits society. Competition, particularly amongst men, is what benefits society. And most of that, of course, is done as a result of either competing for mates or of finding ways to adapt so mates will be more like build a better nest, put nice shiny things in the nest so that the bird comes over. Well, really, you can make the same comparison for men, for human males, as you can for birds, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Guys, let me wait a little bit for the super chats, guys, and check out the second topic. That's a long podcast, Rolo. I hope you have time.
Sure.
Yeah, the Madonna Horror Complex, which is like for who doesn't know what is the Madonna Horror Complex, it's a complex. First, who write about it? It was by Freud,
Mhm.
the establisher of the psychological analysis school, modern psychological analysis school, and he says that all men, almost all men, categorize women like they depend based on two category, which is Madonna and the whore. Madonna is the sexual innocent girl. Let's say she's the good girl.
The
Uh,
nurturer,
she's
the mother,
she's she's the nurturer, the mother,
literally in
like
that case, Madonna is
the
the
good
mother.
the
Mhm.
good wifey quality, let's say, but she's not sexually attractive. Let's say she does not. The men do not look at her in a sexual way. Let's
Mhm.
say, and the whore, the whore, promiscuity. She have so sexual display. She wear provocatively. She have
Mhm.
a black, let's say, history, and all men are can be attracted to both, but
Mhm.
for two different reasons.
Mhm.
Like he want the Madonna to be the mother of his children, the wife, like who raised his children, and the rest of thing. But he will get aroused by the whore,
Hmm.
and there's a conflict in every man's head, as Freud says, between finding the whore, or the whore, or Madonna, like the wife material, or like the slutty material,
Hmm.
who get aroused by. Like, can you elaborate on
Sure.
that?
Sure. I'll put it into modern terms. I think it's interesting that like we still go back to Freud right now, and I would
Mm,
almost argue that Freud was probably made more significant more significant impact in psychology than
mm,
Carl Jung right now.
yeah,
Um, and this is one of the reasons why, is because as we get into sort of the internet age and we have access to more information and more accurate data, and like just schmucks like me can just go look up stats online and connect those dots, I think we begin to see that it was a little bit more relevant than we tend to dismiss Freud. But when it comes to the Madonna horror complex, it's really I think it's analogous, let's just say, to the alpha fucks beta bucks side for hypergamy, right?
yeah,
And I think, well, the problem with this is that um, it puts the female hypergamous dynamic on guys. Like, well, aren't guys hypergamous too? No, only women are hypergamous. Okay.
mm,
And the reason for that is because men have our innate mating strategy, as I said before, is unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is look at the stats for online pornography right now and see that there's a reason why online pornography is free, 4K, streaming, immediate. Anytime you want to get it on your cell phone, it's right there 24 hours a day, and it never has a headache. The reason for that is
making billions of dollars.
it caters to, and making you have billions, trillions of dollars, because it caters to one thing: unlimited access to unlimited
Unlimited.
sexuality. So barring any filter, any obstacle, that's what men will tend to opt for. uh, does that mean that all men are just walking hard-ons and they just want to that's all they want to do is have the whore part of the Madonna? No, it's not necessarily. But it also is, I would say, buffered, or it is certainly limited by that man's ability to get and to realize and actualize unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. As we know, 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, men, only about 20% of guys are going to be able to at least approach unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. They have the potential for it, right? Because those are the guys that women want to get with. 80% of other guys have to figure it out. They've got to adapt. And usually that adaptation means putting all of their eggs in one basket, all of their resources, all of the beta buck side, put all of that beta buck side of qualifications into one basket. And so what they do is they target one woman and they go along with socially enforced monogamy, and they say, she's my soulmate. I'm going to focus on her to the exception of all else. It's like what I call the shotgun, or the sniper mentality, as opposed to the shotgun mentality. And that is, I'm going to focus on her. I'm going to prove my quality to her. I'm going to ask her if she'll marry me. She says no. I'm going to wait another 6 months, and then I'm going to ask her again. And I'm just going to, perseverance. And it's this idea that if I just like stick with it and stick to my guns, and I'm going to hit pay dirt at some point, and then she's going to finally want to get with me, and then we're going to, live happily ever after. Those guys are the guys who cannot live unlimited access to unlimited sexuality because of who they are, what they look like, where they came from, whatever, for whatever reason, they're in the 80 percentile. And so those guys are they have no other choice but to find some way to be really attracted to, or find some sort of preference for the Madonna side of that equation, right? So they have to say, well, I'm looking for I'm got to find a really good woman for me, and she's got to be, into having kids, and it's that sort of, conservative, traditional conservative side of like, this is what you ought to be attracted to. And over the course of a man's life, when he gets to be, say goes through his teens and goes through his 20s and maybe his early 30s, gets to the point where that's basically his only option. And so therefore he convinces himself that that's the way it ought to be, right? Meanwhile, those 20% guys are the players. And those are the guys that women want to bang. So they want to turn into sluts to get with the guy who is the high value guy, who is the 20 percentile, who looks, by all impressions, looks like the guys that they see on the internet. Looks like the guys that they see in the movies. Looks at the guys that because now we're catering to sort of that side of women's mating strategy. Meanwhile, we have pornography, which of course why bother doing anything? Because virtually speaking, I can have unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. And if I'm a beta male at one of the 80th percentile, why would I bother doing anything? Why would I bother with the Madonna whore complex at all? Because all I got to do is I can get sexual satisfaction anytime I want, courtesy of the internet. It's virtual, but it's better than going without, and you don't have to worry about it getting a headache or qualifying or living up to a burden of performance that women would choose you accordingly. So that's that side. But I think that when we talk about the Madonna whore complex, it's usually an analogy to alpha seed and beta need, or alpha fucks and beta bucks. So women are going to be the slut for the guy who's the hot guy in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break, and have a good time with that guy. And I was drunk, he was cute, and one thing led to another.
So you think female can be both?
Oh, absolutely. And it depends on what season of life they happen to be in. So if a woman's between 18 and 28 years old, now again, left to her own devices in a gynocentric social order, and doesn't have to worry about security,
like without moral standard, without religion restriction, without
or
social pressure.
Let's even go one further than that. A social stigma. It doesn't even have to be religious. It could just be social stigma, but without any worry about that. Don't judge me, right? I've been harping on that for a long time. It's this anti-judgmentalism. We've reached a point, I think, in the last 60 years, really since the sexual revolution, where anything that is in any way a critical eye to women's behavior or the results or the consequences thereof becomes judgmental on the part of men and women who would try to, like, in some way, like, disqualify that woman, right? So you'll hear this narrative all the time. Watch any Netflix show, watch any like popular TV show or any movie, or what hell, you could see it in Marvel movies. It's like, well, follow your heart, it'll never lead you astray, right? That's like just not, I mean, that's nonsense. From a perspective of, no, you've got to use your head and make a good decision based on the information and the education you have at that particular time. I don't care how you feel. I don't care how good you feel about jumping off a cliff. That the data and the rationality says you're going to die by doing that. But that's exactly what we've fostered in certainly Western cultures for a long time. And so when we have that and we foster this idea of non-judgmentalism, and at the same time, we remove men's authority to like have any influence over reproduction. What comes back is if the beta bucks side of hypergamy is more or less taken care of for women because they've got jobs or they've got an education or the state is there to help them out, or they've got baby daddies who are paying alimony and child support. That side of hypergamy, the provisioning, protection, and parental investment by order of degree is already taken care of, or they have the idea, they have the perception that it's going to be taken care of. What are women going to focus on? Not the beta bucks, good dad. They're not focusing on Superman. They're not focusing on the guy who's the good provider, who's going to take care of them, like from age 30 on through the time that they're dead, right, and form a family. They're going to be interested in the alpha seed side. And so, yes, they absolutely can be they can be both, and at different times of their life as it is convenient. And I'm glad you brought this up, because in my book, I explained that my second book anyways, I explained between 18 and 28 is what I call the party years, but which is now called the hoe phase, popularly known as the hoe phase. Between 18 and 20, and women themselves say, I've had a really good hoe phase. They'll say that. Yeah. And then when they get to be 29, that's when the chips are down and they got to find a guy to, leave the club with before
I found God.
I found God. I said this about Michaela Peterson, who now just turned 30 years old, and people just ran me up the flagpole for doing that. But it is so predictable and so constant over the last 60 years that you can't ignore it. It doesn't have to be Michaela Peterson. It could be like any woman.
Anyone,
Tommy Lahren, I pointed that out. Brittany Renner, I've been pointing that out as well. 29 years old. Tommy Lahren, 29 years old. All of these women who have these sort of meltdowns about finding a good guy or the nice guy, they're all in that demographic. Why would that be? Well, because they realize on some level of consciousness that they can't. They're done with their hoe phase. They can't compete at that same level anymore, and they're looking for security, right? They're looking for the good dad rather than the good cad prior to, like the guy who was the player and the Dark Triad guy who really rocked their world. They want the guy, they want Batman, they want Iron Man from 18 to 28, and now they want Superman or Captain America from 29 on till they die, right? And so that's why I say that absolutely women can become, they're sluts during a, for lack of a better term, their sluts are more sexually proceptive, let's just say, between 18 and 28, and then suddenly they wise up. And I'm not saying that conversion or that realization or that epiphany isn't genuine. I'm sure it is. It's not my question. The reason I draw attention to it is because of the timing, because that's exactly where that happens all the time. So yes, when it comes to like the Madonna whore thing, yeah, every man wants a slut. Every man wants a slut. He just wants her to be his slut. He wants her to have the exclusive access to that girl. What do they always say? You can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Well, you can't turn a housewife into a hoe either. So you have to like sort of be able to understand. Again, this goes back to that guy who was saying, I hate women, Rollo. I can't understand it. The red pill's really, making me resentful of women. Yeah, maybe now. But when you get to a point where they need you more than you need them, then maybe you'll suddenly have a better appreciation for it, because now you figured out how to leverage it. Maybe you couldn't leverage it between 18 and 28, but God damn it, man, you're 33, 34, 35 years old, and now you can leverage it because you're in a much more powerful position because you've made more of yourself. So, and that's why I tell guys, hold off on monogamy until you're 30. Because guys will hit their sexual market value peak right around 36 years old, somewhere in there. If you maximize your potential, you will be making more money. You'll be better judge of character. You will have more of what makes you attractive at that time, and it will make you more sexually selective. And potentially, hopefully, in your red pill aware, you'll be able to make better decisions when you decide, I want to get with that girl, and I don't want to have anything to do with that girl over there because now I know better.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They usually find God like when their reproductive organ like need restoration, like, and that's too late. That's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Like you fucked everything up. Like you found God now, and you're modest, and nope, thank you.
Well, and I think what's going to really kind of throw things off in the future. I made this case and I know people fight me on this, but I made this case in the fourth book in Religion, that Western influence of feminism and gynocentrism is being globalized, and it's being disseminated across the world, courtesy of the internet right now, courtesy of like social media particularly. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, what country you're from, what ethnicity you are, what religion you are. It's what I call the sisterhood uber alles. It's the sisterhood over everything else. So women in Iran are sisters of the women in the United States or whatever. And it's this sort of dissemination of these pro-feminine, what I call the fempowerment narrative, but it's a meme. It's the idea of female empowerment. And they should, cast off the hijab or the burqa or whatever else, and get on Instagram and dance around a little bit, even if it means they're going to get thrown in jail in an Islamic country, right? It's more important for that. Or when, like, say, I think it was Ireland, when Ireland, which is a Catholic, ostensibly Catholic country, legalized abortion, there wasn't just a party in Ireland when that happened. It was all over the world at that time.
Yeah.
And I pointed that out at the time and saying, this is the sisterhood uber alles. And so I think that really needs to be something that is addressed, not necessarily just from, not just exclusively to an ideological thing, but also like just a cultural thing, a religious thing. Men have to be aware that as globalization takes over the world, what's being globalized is not just the economy and production and whatever. It's not just limited to, goods and trade. It's also includes the sexual marketplace, and it also includes feminism, and it also includes gynocentrism, and what is right or egalitarianism, communitarianism, all of that. The idea that women ought to be, the sisterhood uber alles is a universal global thing, as opposed to just it's just those Western countries. Sooner or later, it gets disseminated across the globe.
Yeah, the wave will reach you like sooner or later. But one of the most like beneficial things among internet and social media, while they're spreading the feminist agenda, like we are getting the other side of narrative, which is like the red pill, such as
Mhm.
the manosphere. Like you will never know how much people look up to you and Richard Cooper and the rest of the let's say manosphere big figures and like
Mhm.
big yeah, big teachers, let's say mentors.
But we are, yeah.
I'll never say guru because
No,
that's more Indian thing, but
guru,
like
teachers,
teachers,
instructors, wise
teachers.
man. I don't know. It's funny because I tell these guys this too, is that we're at a time right now, and that stat you were just talking about, how women are not having children in the UK until like
Mm.
30, I think is the time or
Yeah,
whatever it is. Like they're just simply not, they're single, they're spinsters, right? They're single and childless. But if you take those stats and you compare them to the enrollment rates in colleges, and this could be in the UK or the United States, if you take those and you look at the by differentiation by gender, it's 60 or 65% of college enrollment in the United States is female, whereas it's like 40 or 35%, somewhere around there, between for men, right? Who are, assuming they're enrolling at all. But we have this, what I keep seeing this in like Matt Walsh and these really kind of traditional conservative channels right now. They have this really pressing concern with the fact that these guys are the washout generation, right? They're what Jordan Peterson called the Lost Boys generation, and this has been going on really since 2012. But now we're suddenly saying, "Oh my God, look at all this!" And there's no marriageable men. And I made this point at the end of my show last Sunday, and there's all this concern about like, oh, men aren't taking responsibility and they're not manning up and they're not performing to the old order way that we think that men ought to be. They got to prepare themselves to be a husband and prepare themselves to be a father and prepare themselves for all of the traditional responsibility that we used to hold men to under patriarchy, under the patriarchal society. But you don't get any authority. You don't get to tell women to do anything. You're not the head of household. There's no authority for you to in any way affect that responsibility. So what's the result? Guys like say, screw it, I'm out. I'm not going to go to college. What's the point? I'm not going to get a job that's any more any greater than what I need to sort of like, pay for my rent in my apartment, have a little dog, and have an internet connection so I can jerk off and I can order Uber Eats and I can smoke my weed and I can be happy and live the way that I want to live, because there's no real, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. We constantly hear that from MGTOW. That's where all of this is coming from. It's not that guys aren't, living up to the responsibility. They see no point. There's no incentive for them to do any of this. They sure as hell don't want to get into a marriage, because marriage is in Western societies right now, like I said, is an unconscious.
The game is not fair.
Yeah, it's rigged, and they're not. It's a bad business contract, and most of them figure that out somewhere along the way. And it ain't me that's telling them this. They're not dumb. They have access to it just as much as I do. So that's the reason. But we get traditional conservative pundits who are very, very concerned about this, but they're not concerned about the guys. They're not concerned about the welfare of that generation of guys who are dropouts. They're concerned with finding suitable mates for women of that. Their primary focus is not on bettering men's lives. It's on making sure that there's enough available women or available men who are economically attractive and are hot and got their shit together and go to the gym and are meet this unbelievable criteria. And they're very, it's like concern trolling, right? They're very concerned about this generation of guys who dropped out, but not because they give one rat's ass about these guys. It's they care about the women, because these guys ain't living up to what those women want. That tells me that they're focused in a gynocentric way, not on the problems of men, but on the problems of women. And when men become the problems of women, that's when they take note. That's when it's a crisis. That's when they want to have, 2-hour podcast. Matt Walsh wants to have this 2-hour podcast about, raising awareness of this. And it's like, no, you're only doing that because you're sucking up and simping to the feminine imperative. You're simping to the sisterhood uber alles. That's where it goes. Until we change our mind about that, we're screwed. Women are going to continue not to have kids. They're going to continue to be single into their, their prime working age in 2030. And we're just going to sit here with our thumbs up our ass because we won't accept the fact that men don't have authority. And we're going to still hold them to the same degree of responsibility as a result of that. So until we're willing to have that conversation, you might as well just go on to the next topic, traditional conservative pundit. And they're not solving those problems. As far as I know, I'm the only one talking about this. Maybe, Rich Cooper is, and some of the other guys in the Manosphere are raising awareness to this. But in the meantime, you got louder voices that are concerned with the issues of women because men can't live up to the standards that they think women are deserving of at this point. And it's like, screw you. You need to talk, you need to address the. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound and saying, well, this must be the reason. It's not the reason. And they won't, just like this inability to actually think in those terms. And it, again, so what do these guys do? They look to me, even Muslim men. Maybe they look to you. They look to Craig. They look to whoever is going to say, who's going to be the ones who are concerned and interested in those guys coming up and to benefit them individually, as opposed to, well, you need to man up and be responsible so that women will want to marry you. They're going to tell me to screw off if that was my motivation. I'm not going to do that. And they're not going to college. They don't get teachers. They raised by single mothers. They don't have a father figure. They don't even know what masculinity is because it's been confused or it's been subjectivized to them for so long. And they don't go to college. They don't have teachers at college. What is it? 77% of teachers from kindergarten all the way up to postgraduate school is female. So where are guys getting male influence? The answer is they're not, and that's why their enrollment is where it is, and their prospects for life is where it is right now. And so where do they go? The Manosphere. Where do they go? Rollo Tomassi. Where do they go? Who seems like they give a shit about them and has a good comprehensive analysis of what the actual problem is. And so suddenly we become teachers. Gurus, whatever you want to call it. So now I try to impress upon guys who are coming into this sphere who want to, like, I want to help. Okay, fine. But realize that the guys that you're trying to help look to you as a teacher. They look to you as a father figure. They look to you as somebody who's knowledgeable in some way, who hopefully they can learn from you so they can better their lives, as opposed to building themselves up to be something so that they're more acceptable in a female-centric society.
Exactly.
There's your rant.
The last
one rant.
the last question for before we jump to the last topic, which is there's a balance between Madonna and whore, like even in young age, like can we have that character? And let me describe.
It used to be. I think it used to be.
Let me describe it for you. Like that girl who's wifey material, who's modest, like in her her clothes, where she's not promiscuous, but with her man, like she can fantasize, do some fantasies, like she can do whatever he fantasize, like she's coachable, let's say, and she enjoy it. Like, is that character possible? Like, there's a decent balance. Like, it will never be a perfect balance for everyone, but there is, on the spectrum, there's a girl like 70% Madonna, 25% her. Like that suits me, for example. 50-50 suits you, like 25%, 75%. Yeah.
33%.
So is that available, or do you believe?
Okay. I think it is, but you have to understand that what the cultural influences are on women that prevents that from happening. So can you turn a hoe into a housewife, or a housewife into a hoe, for that matter? Really, what you're asking me is, can you turn a housewife into a hoe? And the problem with that is that, culturally speaking, from a Western perspective, is that if you're looking at it from a religious side of things, and a woman is modest as a result of religious upbringing, well, then you've got the good girl. And can you bring sort of like the slut out? And yeah, you can. I'm sure you could. It depends on like what your game is, how good you look, how are you on top of your game? Do you really give her do you understand her nature and your nature well enough so that you can leverage that so that you can say, okay, baby, here we go.
Coach her.
Here it is, right? But there's the religious side of that, which says, oh, a woman must be modest and she's not supposed to do these things and she's not supposed to, be a porn star for you. She's your wife. You should respect her and she should be the one who initiates. And I mean, right now, just the very fact that you would buy her a Peloton, right? You'd buy her an exercise machine of some sorts. That's like a very, very offensive, because how dare you tell her she should be anything different than what she is right here? Like she's perfect in
positivity.
There's I remember when the Peloton commercial came out and I was on Pat Campbell's show and we talked about that and women were irate about that whole thing. But the reason they were irate is because of what I'm saying here is the cultural narrative is that men are never allowed to tell women that they ought to be sexual. They're never allowed to tell women that they ought to choose them as a sexual partner. That led to a discussion, and maybe this is relevant to Islam as well, but that led to a discussion about what we call duty sex. Right? You're supposed to have sex with your husband. It's prescribed in the Bible even. It says, do not deny your husband.
Yeah.
There, right? And so, and I didn't make up the word. I heard this in evangelical churches, which is, wives would call it duty sex. You have to have sex with your husband because he's got to get his medicine, right? Whether you want to or not. And then you find that you'll really be into it if you just do it regularly. And it's like, no, it's because you're not aroused by your husband and you're doing it as an obligation rather than innate desire. And that's really what this boils down to, is you cannot negotiate genuine desire. However, from a religious perspective, you can say you can obligate women to having sex with you because it's like wifely duties, right? It's duty sex. I don't know how that works in Islam per se, but you've got that. If you've got the woman who's the good girl, who's your virgin bride, maybe she has no sexual partners before you. Can you turn her into somebody that is into a woman that is more sexually, aggressive or wants to actually initiate sex? I'm not saying you can't. I'm sure there are examples of it. I've seen guys tell me that they've done exactly that. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but you have to understand what you're up against from a religious perspective. That's number one. Number two is from a cultural perspective. So women are never like any sex that a woman doesn't want to have, even with her husband, is equitable to rape. You will hear feminists say that all day long. That's what really concerned me during the Me Too.
The marital rape thing.
Yes, is marital rape. Yes, and it's any sex that a woman doesn't want to have, any sex that is not enthusiastic consent, whether she's married or she's not, is sex she didn't want to have, and that constitutes rape. And so, for instance, I mean, theoretically speaking, if that were legislated in law or whatever, enthusiastic consent, you could be at the divorce settlement table and say, well, Mrs. Tomassi, did you ever have sex with Mr. Tomassi that you really didn't want to have? Oh, yeah, I had duty sex because I'm obligated by my religion or whatever. Oh, congratulations, you're Mr. Tomassi. You're now guilty of marital rape because that's sex that she didn't want to have. Give me some money. And that's a really dangerous place to go societally, and particularly in a gynocentric social order. We were toying with that idea back in like 2017, 2018 during like the Me Too era. And I have written several essays about that, but it's the idea that men have any kind of control over a woman's sexual selectivity. Right? If she's not like tearing off your clothes, and like, remember what they were saying? It was like, yes means yes and no means no, and that kind of stuff. Right. And then it was informed consent or whatever. Like, you have to sign this prayer. Like David Chappelle did a comedy. Like, I'm going to touch you here. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take your panties. Okay. Then I'm going to do this. Like, that was this laundry list of
sign down on this form, please, lady.
Exactly. And it was ludicrous because that's not how human beings work. Right. And anyone knows that. But in a gynocentric social order that is litigious like that, it seemed to make sense, but it's ridiculous and it's funny. It makes for a good comedy skit, but that's where we were going. That's what we were doing. And so that's another part of that, is like, how do you turn your hoe, or to your housewife, into a hoe under those conditions where feminism has a cardinal rule, a prime directive of feminism has always been never do anything for the express pleasure of a man. because if you do, then you're betraying the strong, independent woman narrative. So if you do something because you wanted to please that guy, then you're going against the sisterhood. And that's something that women have to really like confront, because if they're really hot for a guy and they want to have his babies, it becomes a choice between being a strong, independent woman and being the woman who's like, I got to have this guy and I really want to reproduce with this guy.
Yeah. Don't you think? Don't you think? I believe. I believe if the girl is innocent, have no sexual past as a virgin. By the way, like I don't know if you heard about this or not. Here in the Arab world, in the Middle East, uh, I will assume, or I will, yeah, it is around 95% of girls before marriage are virgins. So
Mhm.
don't you think that it is more easy for to turn a Madonna into like a little bit slutty if she was with no
Yeah.
sexual
Mhm.
preference, because you will be her alpha anyway, almost anyway. You'll
Mhm.
be her alpha anyway. Like she will love it. You are the introduction of the sexual like world for her, so she will look up to you as a teacher. Like,
You're
what do
the
you
only
want me
guy
to
she's
do?
ever had. Mhm. Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Don't
what
you
I
think
call.
it's more easy?
Well, I think it is. I've talked to guys about this before. In fact, I think I've done essays about this. Is like when I've talked to guys who are like in the pickup artist community or want to learn game or whatever. We always have, sooner or later you get around to this conversation about like how like women's sexual past
Mhm.
influences their sexual future, right?
Yeah.
Um, so and I'll come back to that thought, but as far as like statistically speaking, uh women who have only ever had zero partners before their husband tend to have happier marriages. They the lower incidence of divorce.
Yeah.
They tend to like I said, what is it, report more marital satisfaction or whatever. Of
Mhm.
course, lower rates of STDs. There's, and lower rates of depression, I should say, as well, because they've only ever been with one guy. They don't have any other benchmark except for the dude that they married, and that's who they got with. That's another reason why, again, in my fourth book, I mentioned that I understand the religious proscriptions, I guess, prohibitions against premarital sex. I understand that from a
Yeah.
practical sense. It makes, like, here we have the data and we can now understand why there's a religious prohibition against premarital sex. There's two reasons, really. That's one is that lower rates of divorce, more bonding, I guess, in intimacy, I guess. So there's those aspects that go along with it. You have
Higher happiness.
happiness, a very beneficial thing. The other part of that, of course, is the flip side of that is women will complain that it's well, if you don't know any better, how do you know you got the best, right? Is he the best I can do? Is the question that hypergamy constantly asks women psychologically. It's the hindbrain question. Is he the best I can do? Well, if the answer is, well, yeah, because he's the only guy I can do, then
Mhm.
yes, he is the best. So therefore you've got children, you've got a family investment and everything else that goes along with that. The problem is that usually that removes, again, prohibitions against premarital sex removes control of hypergamy away from women. So the
Yeah.
only way I'm allowed to have sex is if it was with my husband. And if your religion is a patriarchal Abrahamic religion, that seems a lot like sexual repression to
Mhm.
women. And so therefore they chomp at the bit when it comes to that stuff, particularly in a society that says, you go, girl. And so that's number one. Number two is that it seems also like the prohibitions against premarital sex also works in men's favor, because if that girl's a virgin, and this is why we prize virgins, by the way, and yes, it is actually a thing. It's not a social convention. It is an
Yeah. It is
evolved
not.
evolutionary fact.
It's wiring.
I keep start seeing these articles right now. Maybe you've seen them too, but
Mhm.
like it was on CNN. They're trying to say like virginity is just a social construct. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a
The
practical
hymen is a myth.
fact of human biology is what it is. And if we can turn it into some subjective social construct, then we can say, you know what, who cares? Just have sex with whoever you want to. And then you get to the point where we are in society right now. But the reason for men wanting to have virgins is it ensures paternity. If she has, like they're talking about, oh, there's no such thing, the hymen, the myth of the hymen, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
saw
kind of,
that bullshit.
okay. whatever. But the fact of the matter is that men are interested in ascertaining paternity. That's still part of our evolutionary firmware. We didn't have, like I said, DNA testing until like the 1970s to know that the kid is actually ours. And you know what? Here we are in 2022, and our brains as men are still the brains we had way back in the way, 100,000 years ago, and we're still concerned with paternity. I want to know that the kid is mine because biologically speaking, that is my imperative to know that I've reproduced and my genes and my genetics will go on to the next generation. That's how important it is. So that's why we value virgins. That's why we socially value virgins, yes, but it's also a practical concern for men as well to make sure that the damn kids are my kids. That's really what and I don't, it's like, it's not fucking rocket science, man. That's what it is. And it's not a social convention. Yeah, I mean, we have social conventions that are around that particular, latent function of it, but that's, virginity is a real thing. And so is, you look at the status and you look at the, like I said, the happiness and divorce and all that other stuff that goes along with it. So does it make sense that we should have prohibitions against premarital sex? Yes, it does. And if you couch it in religion, it's that much more believable. It's kind of like, don't eat pork, don't eat shellfish, right? It's prohibitions against like dietary things as well. Did it have a function? Well, God said not to, so I'm not going to eat hooved animals. Well, yeah, back in the day, it probably would kill you to do so. Okay. But there was a practical function that was attached to that religious prohibition. Same thing with prearranged marriages. Same thing with no premarital sex. There was reasons for it that went beyond just the religious. There were actual practical, logistical reasons for this. So, whether it's metaphysical or it's like practical, is kind of irrelevant in this case. So when I talk about like premarital sex and why, like can you turn that virgin bride into sort of like your hot, every man wants a slut, right? He just wants her to be his slut. Can you do that? Yeah. And I would say it's probably easier under those conditions, because you're the only alpha she's ever known, and you're the only man she's ever known, and you're the only metric by which she can measure any other man. Whether that's a religious prohibition or it's just simply, you got with you and I stuck with you, right? That's why I tell guys, I said, if you're a player and you're spinning plates and you're having promiscuous sex or whatever, that having sex with a virgin is almost a liability, because that woman will fixate on you, as they say, you never forget your first. That woman will fixate, that virgin will fixate on you as her alpha that she is widowed from, until a guy who comes in and makes a bigger impression.
Even player guys avoid having sex with virgin because they know the impact on
Yes,
virgins. Like if they want to have
they should
sex,
anyways.
they will have it with promiscuous girl. But like
Mhm.
if the girl told him I'm a virgin, he said no, I will
Mhm.
never be this guy. No, no.
Mhm. And
Like
I think a lot
keep
of people
yourself.
want to make that an ethical issue, and it's not. It's a practical issue, because is this girl because like most girls who are virgins that have sex for the first time with a guy, they're having sex with that guy because he looks like a good sexual partner. He looks like a guy that's going to be fun in bed and knows his way around a woman's body. Okay, it's like why is it that guys who have had a lot of sex are like heroes, or they're higher value men because they have had many sex partners. They have been sexually successful with many women, whereas for women, a woman who has many sex partners is seen as kind of a slut or loose or whatever. And it doesn't have to be like hundreds. I'm just saying, like, if she's had sex before, the reason why she is of a lower value in a sexual market value is because that she's, first of all, that goes against her own sexual strategy, and then second of all, it's the idea that that girl has guys in her past that might have been a better alpha impression on her, as opposed to the guy that you happen to be. But the guy who is good in bed is seen as a better sexual experience and a better potential relationship, because because he's the guy that other men want to be and other women want to bang. Clearly, because he has more sexual partners.
Hmm. The the last topic, and like we'll try to make that short as possible. And there is a question that I wanted to ask you since years, actually. I wanted to ask you in person, but let's hit the last subtopic, which is is there's a balance between the alpha and beta, Rolo? Like I have my own opinion, but I want to hear yours. is there's like is it a spectrum, or is
I,
it like for
mm,
guys, is it a binary, it is 0 1 thing, like alpha or beta, like you
mhm.
can't have any mutual characteristics from both? Is there's a balance between these two characters?
I don't think guys really have a choice, to be honest with you. I think that they're like you're assessed on like it's cads versus dads, right? As I was saying, are you Superman or are you Batman? Are you Captain America or are you Iron Man? Or are you just some simpish kind of loser who just sort of plods around and doesn't have any? You're an incel, right? You're invisible. You're sexually invisible. So we have to sort of define like where that guy is and who that guy is in the first place. So let's just say, for sake of argument, we're gonna say we've got a guy who is alpha, but he still has beta characteristics, or beta. Let's say tendencies. I think what we tend to do is we tend to conflate alpha with red pill, right? And beta with blue pill. It's like, no, those are mutually exclusive terms. Okay.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
can,
yeah.
there are all kinds of
Can be blue-pilled
blue
alpha
pill
and
alphas all day long. I've got myself into more trouble with that one than you don't even want to know. Mike Rashid, I'm talking to you. But I yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
yeah,
But those are not mutual. You can definitely be red pill and be very beta. I mean, there's a lot of guys who are in the black pill MGTOW community who are very red pill aware, but they're very beta and they don't want to. They just simply aren't competitive. They're not respectable and they're not competitive. I'm
yeah.
not saying all of them are like that. I'm just saying there's on that end of the bell curve. Okay. And then likewise, there's blue pill alpha. So those are two mutually exclusive things. But then we have to sort of define like what are the characteristics that make a guy alpha and what makes a guy beta, right? We tend
That's
to
a great
look at
question.
beta as negative and we think of alpha as positive. Like I said before, we're using it as like insults right now. Like, you're
Yeah,
not very alpha. That was fresh like that girl and he simped for that girl. He's not alpha. Like, I don't think he's selling alpha to you. Like, here, get your hot, fresh alpha. I just made some more. That's not the point of the red pill isn't to make you alpha or to make you beta or whatever. It is to inform you. And that is like, I've got to keep hammering that home, especially now when everybody wants to take the red pill and turn it into whatever the hell it is that they want to do. And usually it's, well, these guys are selling advice and they're trying to tell you how to be alpha. I have never said, here's how you be alpha, guys. Here's the red pill and the red pill will make you alpha. I've never sold
I
that.
can show you the road, but you have to walk it.
You have to walk it. I can only hold up the mirror and you have to want to look at. I just work here, man. So the idea of like what is alpha and what is beta, we got to step away from the idea of one's an insult and one's not, right? Or one is a qualification. And if you don't live up to what my expectations of you are, then you're not alpha. I think we need to erase that. First of all, we need to realize that being alpha is like being dominant, being competent, being confident, being jacked. I mean, there's a physical aspect to it too. There's making the most of your physique, money, muscles game, right?
Leadership skills,
Leadership skills, but
social
again,
dominance.
yeah, social dominance. But again, can you be antisocial and be alpha? Yes. Can you be pro-social and alpha? Yes, of course you can. Again, it's it's that mindset. And
You
is
have
it
to be anti.
congruent?
You have to be antisocial to be socially dominant. Actually,
And yeah,
you don't have to be extrovert.
dark triad personality traits are the number one set of personality traits that get women off. I could show you study after study after study.
Yeah, yeah.
Only women have what's called hybristophilia. I don't know if you know
Of
what that is, but
course, of
yeah,
course.
women want to get with convicted criminals in jail. Okay, like evil is sexy. Let's just be honest. So there's that side of it. And then you can be alpha and be the devil, right? I mean, what is it in Lucifer Morningstar on the show? It's like women think he's the sexiest man alive. He plays the devil on TV. Okay, you do realize that. I don't
That
care.
makes
I
sense.
just want that
Yeah,
relationship. I want to be detective, right? That's what women want. So you have this, you got to understand that nature, understand the nature of women before you can understand what really like what alpha means to you. Are you Captain America or are you going to be Iron Man? Are you going to be sort of like the dark triad alpha or are you going to be the guy who's the pro-social alpha? So what are we talking about? Great. In either case, that has to be your dominant character. That has to be your dominant personality. You have to be, women have to expect alpha characteristics from a congruency. I keep harping on congruency for forever. You have to be congruent with what women expect of you. And if you look a certain way and you act a certain way, you better damn well be dominant and be competent and perform according to that congruency, not because of the women, but because that's who you honestly are in the first place. So let's just clarify that right there. Now, so if you're predominant, you have to live it. Yeah. If your predominant character is alpha, for whatever, for lack of a better term, then when you show vulnerability and when you show beta sides, like the beta side of yourself, whether that's provisioning or you're going to read to your kids or you're going to do homework with them or you're going to show up to piano recital or what, you're going to be a responsible father, those are comforting, but they're not arousing. Okay, that's not seductive. Like the beta bucks side of hypergamy is not seductive. It's necessary. Definitely for security,
formulating families,
absolutely for forming families. So we can't look at beta in terms of like the beta side of the beta buck side of hypergamy. You can't look at it in terms of, oh, I'm going to go and go to the PTA meeting, and I'm going to go and go to soccer practice, and I'm going to go and be a good dad, or I'm going to go and take my wife out on date night, and I'm going to that beta buck side, or I'm going to show vulnerability. I'm going to cry a little bit, like that kind of stuff. Maybe that's who you are. Maybe that's what you're about, but understand this, that's not game. That is in no way seductive. That doesn't arouse women. What arouses women is your dominance, your competence, or the alpha seed side of things, right? But that's not you can't be that all the time. And in fact, if you are predominantly alpha and you're predominantly like, I don't say stoic. I think a lot of people really misconstrue stoicism with alpha. They want to because it seems like a good way to live. And I'm not saying it's not, but it's like it doesn't have to. Stoicism doesn't have to be alpha. You could be stoic and be like a gamma male like loser as well.
And you have to know, have to know that women do not rely on alpha. They know that.
Well, alpha is the alpha side of, or the expectation, I should say. The alpha expectation of men's personality is rooted in protection for sure. She wants to know that you can kick ass when their need arises. She wants to know that you can provide and you can go out there and get things done and not be depressed and not cry and not be a pansy ass, especially when her survival and the survival of the kids are at stake, or the perception of it is. Like, you have to be the one who's going to provide security. So there's a security aspect that is very much integral to competency, dominance. What's that?
There is no commitment.
No, well, but again, like alpha can be pro-social or anti-social. So, but the beta buck side is still necessary. But guys, particularly guys who their only game has been predicated on just that, they think that should be arousing. They think that should be game, and then they find out that if I do more of it, and I've got this what I call relational equity. Like I keep doing all these things that I'm supposed to do, and I'm communicative, and I'm good with the kids, and I go and mow the lawn, and she doesn't have to ask me to keep the toilet seat up or down or whatever the fuck it is, right? Like that kind of stuff. That maybe that's appreciated in attraction, but has nothing to do with turning that woman on whatsoever. So if you're predominantly alpha and you show little flashes of beta, that's more believable. So if you're like a badass and suddenly your dog dies and you're crying, then she's like, oh, I'm here for you. Like there's an appreciation for that. And in fact, it might be more endearing to her if you're predominantly alpha and you show like a little flash of beta here, maybe unavoidably or whatever. But if you're more like you're okay with that, but you're predominantly alpha all the time, then those little bits of beta are like little pieces of candy, right? The rewards for that. And it reinforces the relationship that should be based on polarity to begin with. Now, if you're predominantly beta and you show an alpha flash of alpha now and then, it seems like you're pandering. It seems like you're going, well, I'm going to be alpha right now, even though you're actually more beta than anything else. And her perception or overall perception of your predominant personality is that you're a beta and you're reliable and dutiful, but you're not as exciting as the guys she banged back in, Cancun in her college days. But you're still reliable, you're loyal, she's comfortable with you. But if you try to up the alpha from being predominantly beta, that is less believable than the other way around. So
Mhm.
that, I think, is those are the things that you primarily have to understand when you're trying to say, oh, is there a balance between alpha and
Yeah.
beta characteristics? And we get into this idea that beta characteristics are intrinsically simping, they're intrinsically bad, they're intrinsically, if you're going to get no, you're getting married, you must be a blue pill cuck. You're an idiot to do that, right? Well, maybe you are under legal conditions, but the idea that you should be a provider and parentally invested and everything else, that's responsibility. That religion expects that from you. Patriarchy expects that from you. So you have that duty to do that stuff, but it's not going to make her want to fuck you. She's not going to want to have sex with you as a result of you being a great dad. She wants to have sex with you because you look good. You look like Jason Momoa and you act like Jason Momoa. And again, I'm using this as an extreme example. This is just an illustration. You don't actually have
Yeah.
to look like Jason Momoa, but
Yeah.
having that attitude and that build and that drive and that dominance. Again, was Napoleon an alpha or was Napoleon a beta? Right?
Mm.
He, guy who was emperor of France, right? I use that all the time. Or Lemmy Kilmister, was he alpha or was he beta, right? Well, depending on what your definition of what alpha is. Now, if a guy who's a badass like Jason Momoa or Lemmy from Motorhead shows just like a little sensitive side, or like, oh, I really like cats, whatever it is, that seems more endearing because it's ego affirming for women because they believe they're the only one that can draw that out of their big bad alpha. It's like Tarzan and Jane. Like I
Mm.
gotta tame the savage beast. It's like a
Mm.
Beauty and the Beast. In fact, is exactly that archetype. He's this horrible beast that just broods around his castle. He turns all the furniture into living candles and shit like that. And he's just
Mm.
like this,
A
and
civilized
only
monster.
she's the only one who can civilize him. And then, but who does she fall in love with? The
The
prince?
monster.
She falls in love with a monster is what she falls in love with. And so when that monster shows just little flashes of beta now and then, that's just like manna from heaven for women because it means that they think that they're the only one that can solve this guy's problem.
Hmm. What a great answer. I can't
There
tell
you
you
go.
that.
There's your balance. Be predominantly alpha and with flashes of beta. And understand what your responsibilities are. And that
Mm.
I think that fits in quite well with religion and patriarchy too.
Okay, I will. I'll try. I'll answer this the super chat like fast, quick.
Okay.
Why do governments try to get women everywhere in high position, especially in the West, where, for example, it is mandatory for a company to have women on the board?
Right. Oh, I'll go one better than that. Go look at who the director of the IMF is or the European Monetary Fund is. Go look at who is in control of the United States financial systems right now. It is all women. It's not just corporate. It goes beyond that right now. If you go and you look at who holds the purse strings in country after country, it is primarily women who are doing that, and they're the ones that are in control of the spending and the directing of that money right now. So it goes well beyond just the corporate kind of thing. But why is that? Well, first of all, because feminism was never about equality. It was a
Yeah,
power grab and is still a power grab.
superiority.
Yes, it's about supremacism, about female supremacism is what it is. And we will not realize that until we get to a point where men are so disenfranchised that we'll be so powerless unless we start thinking about stuff like this right now and start having these conversations, which we're not allowed to do right now.
Hmm. Great. So we came to the last question, which is a personal question that I wanted to ask you since very long time.
Mm,
Uh, do you know, like as we know, we are wired as a man, like as a human males, to spread our seeds, and like the lineage of the blood lineage is
mm,
traced in whole humanity through the males in the family,
mm,
and we have innate desire, which is the need to be father. This sense
mm,
we got that. Like I see that in you and Richard. What are you doing for the young man's is driven by this instinct that like you want to teach young men things. That's we call in Arabic it's fitra abawiyya, which is fatherness instinct that it's
mm.
inside every man. Like
Paternal instinct.
yeah, paternal instinct.
Mhm.
So following for that, like I know you're married since 24 year almost, like
Mhm.
right, 24
20
year,
25 as of July last year.
25. Well,
Mhm.
congratulations, like upfront. Uh, okay, uh, you do not have any male sons, right? Like any child.
I have a male nephew. My brother has a male son.
Ah, nephew. Don't you? Did you ever regret not having male son or more children, Rollo?
I'm trying to have Torsia bear me a son right now, but we'll see how that goes later on. I'm gonna get to turn her into a sister wife. Let's see. Maybe I will convert to Islam just so I can have this. I can still do it. No, do I regret that? No, I don't. I had one child by design, and whether it was a girl or a boy, I'm actually kind of glad I had a girl because we have a lot of boys in my son. I have a brother. I have a younger brother. My father came from a family of 4 kids,
Mhm.
and most of them were male. I can only think of like maybe one female cousin that I have. Um, and so was it that what I like, it's funny is like I never really thought about that in terms like when I was having a kid. I there was a time where we were contemplating on having another one, and I'm like, I would rather have just this one and put all of my energy and effort and time into this one because I
That's
when
risky from psychological perspective.
it is, but like you also have to remember that like I think a lot of people told me I was being like selfish, like you're being very selfish not giving her a brother or a sister, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm an asshole for doing that, but she does have two cousins right now who are very close. They live pretty close by to us as well, so they're pretty as a family. My brother and I are pretty tight when it comes to the family stuff, anyways. Um, but and then there's my wife's side of the family as well. So it's a lot of other things going. But you're talking about like patrilinear, like genetic bloodline kind of thing. So I try to be as open and as let's say fatherly or teaching wise with my nephew as I possibly can. Um, but when I had my daughter
But
and we were
but
contemplating.
your nephew is not holding your name.
No, he is well, he's holding my real name for sure, but
Yeah, yeah. Not. I'm not talking about the family name. I'm talking
yeah, I
about
know, like
your personal name, the first name.
he's got a quarter of no, that's yeah, I know. Maybe that's an American thing. I don't know. He doesn't have my first name, but he also doesn't have my brother's first name either. So but it's I do understand what you're saying as far as like bloodline is concerned. I didn't really even contemplate this until I read The Ape That Understood the Universe. And also there's a great book called Alpha God by Dr. Hector Garcia. He's
Yeah, yeah.
kind of a masculine apologist, but he kind of made me think about some certain things is that men are primarily concerned with their genetic line. We're primarily concerned, is the kid ours? I mean, to the point where that's what triggers jealousy response in guys. It's not about emotional investment. It's did you bang him and where did you bang him and how did you bang him? For infidelity, when marriage vows are broken, right? For women, it's usually loss of resources. It's, oh, are you in love with her? I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's like polygyny, I guess, is easier for women than like having infidelity with, being polygamy or polyamory is for men.
Polyamory. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's the innate, need to pass on your genes. Now, one of the things that, and I'm not saying I buy into this, but this is a school of thought, anyways, is that organisms like animals, human beings, whatever, are really machines that are the purpose of those machines is to pass on the DNA, the genetics, like the genes of whatever that machine is. So for human beings, like our gene, the only thing that's going to actually be immortal, the only shot at immortality is passing on your genes to the next generation. That's why it is so imperative, I believe, for men to understand that the kid is theirs and not get cuckolded. Like when we call a cuckold or whatever, like and that's a really harsh insult because it means that your genes aren't in your kids,
Yeah.
more or less,
Raising someone else.
And you're a sucker because you're basically building your whole life and spending all of your resources, your time, your energy, your parental investment in an organism that is a machine that is not going to pass on your genes. And I'm still kind of like sifting through that, but it's a fascinating idea that organisms and what animals, plants, even whatever, are just simply vehicles to pass on genes to the next generation. And when you think about that in red pill terms, that explains a lot when it comes to like paternity and our interests in, cuckoldry and blah, blah, blah. So how does that play into having a son or having a daughter? And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, your son, if I were to have a son, he would still have half of my wife's genes and half of my genes. So unless I clone myself,
yeah, but but he will follow your like your.
Yeah, but that's another. And I'm glad you brought that up because and then finally, what I want to say is this: is that human beings are unique. I think in that, well, maybe not entirely unique, but we're certainly unique in the sense that we pass on ideas and knowledge from one generation to the next. I think is the cornerstone of our success as a species, because we have a written language, we have a verbal language, we have a visual language now, because we've got technology and everything else. But the thing is that the generation that came before us built something upon the generations that came before them. And now we're building on top of like our father and our grandfather's generations. And that I think is something that we have to be, particularly in a red pill sense, we have to be very aware that that's what we're doing. Even me as a teacher, not even me as a father, but I have to remember that what I'm saying right now, the books that I'm writing right now, they're doing it right now. I have every expectation that people will take that and they'll use that as a basis for whatever it is that they build later on in the next generation, in the next century. So it's up to me. I think I have an obligation to objective truth, and I have to like be on top of my game. I have to be bulletproof when I'm doing debates or doing a show like this or whatever else. Because right now, what we're doing right now, hopefully this will be recorded and will live in perpetuity forever or long enough so that the next guy in Gen X or Gen Z or whatever comes after that will see this and go, man, those guys were really smart. But maybe we can use this for what we're going to build next, right? It's very much that, and that doesn't have to be the red pill. It can be like architecture or computers, or it can be, technology. It can be culture. It can be lots of different things. So we pass on that information in the form of like, data and, what we can record, but also in ideas. And I think that's probably where I probably should end this, is that we pass on ideas from one generation to the next generation, and those ideas, which are called, Richard Dawkins called them memes, right? There's some memes that are successful, and there's some that are not so successful. And passing on those ideas, we call them virtues. We can call them values. We can call them religion. We can call them convictions. We can, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be that, but whatever your beliefs are, or how you came to develop those are ideas that you can pass on to the next generation, and they can build upon those as well, for better or worse. So I think that's probably the most important part about like having a son or having a daughter or being like the father. Like I'm just looking in the chat right now. It's like, oh, you're the dad I never had. I get that a lot. And people are looking for somebody who is going to give them that wisdom and that guidance. And they're looking for teachers that they didn't get because of whatever circumstances. So it's not so much about, I think, I think it's very important. Our biological imperative, our prime directive in life is to pass on our genes. But I think it's equally as important to pass on our ideas to the next generation so that they can take those and they can build upon those. And hopefully it helps them going forward, because I don't know what they're going to have to face when I'm dead, and you don't, and anybody else. But we can pass those ideas along through media or culture or books or whatever else, and hope for the best, and hope that those guys take that and they live a better life, and they propagate as a result of it, and they survive as a result of that too. So I think it's important, like DNA and lineage is very important, but also the perpetuation of ideas and ideals is very important as well.
So let me get this right. Uh, you never
You're
wished
all my
that
sons. You're right. You're correct.
you never wished that you have son, or you have one more like son. You never thought about that? Like,
Only now. Only now. When I
yeah,
had my daughter, and again, it's not about regret or you're thinking twice about things. I'm not going to, certainly not with my wife, I'm not going to have any more kids, but it's not about it's not about regret or thinking like, oh my gosh, didn't
Wish
you?
that things happen, and you have one more kid.
I
It's not a regret. Wish that happened.
Torsia. Um, no, but oh, maybe my one shot at a son. No, I used to think in those terms, but I don't now because I mean, would I like to have a son? Yeah, I can't. At 50 years old, I might be able to swing it until I'm like, if I had one right now, right, and then I become 70 some odd years old or whatever, and then I'm, he's 18. Great. I think I'm more effective as a teacher, for lack of a better term, because I only had one child. Um, would I have liked that child to be male or female? Honestly, I love my daughter. I mean, I don't have any regrets about having my
Yeah, of
daughter,
course.
and I have instilled my and I'll tell you another thing is like, it's not just about the lineage so much right now as it is, like I said, passing on ideas. And I can pass on ideas to my niece and my nephew and my grandchildren for sure. Right. Hopefully they'll read my book and go, well, Grandpa Rollo was a real son of a bitch. Right. Well, let's talk about this. It's at least it sparks a conversation at sometime in the future. Um, but I think again, it's not so much a lineage as it is about perpetuating ideas and perpetuating getting people to think, having an obligation to objective truth. Those kinds of things. I would much rather have a broader family, an extended family at this point. But would I have liked to have a son? Yeah, sure. I would now. At the time, I wasn't really thinking about it, and I don't really care. I went through fatherhood, raised a pretty damn good daughter, I think, and again, no regrets. But I don't. If I had the chance to go and do it over again, I don't think I'd do anything different because I'm where I'm at right now as a result of that decision.
Yeah.
And I had the time to do what it is that I do, so my other sons can benefit as a result of it.
Yeah, yeah. Because for us as Muslims, like
Mhm.
the solution is very easy.
Maybe I need sister
Second
wife.
wife,
Maybe
second wife.
I need
Yeah,
concubines. Yes.
yeah. Second wife, like
Let
more
somebody
kids.
else. Let some beta raise them. They're just my genes are out there.
It might be.
Mhm.
But who knows?
Nobody's come to my front door and said, "Hey, Dad," yet. I'm not saying it couldn't happen.
I finally find you.
Nope.
Okay, last super chat question. Like before we wrap this up, we close to 3 hours. Like I really enjoyed this
I know.
this
I wasn't
podcast.
expecting to go this long, and my wife's downstairs going, "When are you gonna come down and eat?" I'm like,
I'm
"It's
I'm
okay."
sorry for that, but it was
What
so
I mean, I
enjoyable.
joined the conversation. That's all.
Yeah, Melvin saying like, what do you think this is the solution against modernism and feminism?
Mm-hmm.
What we men have to do: save yourself, enjoy the collapse, enjoy the decline, as we
Yeah, and
say.
what? And wait for the meteor, right? No, there's
Did you read the book, which is the Death of the West by
no, I
Patrick
have not,
McKenna?
but I know I think you suggested. Did you suggest that to me when we were on with
Yeah, yeah,
Ugly?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. With
I have
Rich.
not, but I will definitely go check it out. Now, did you see it was on Netflix. It was Don't Look Up, and it's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
meteor that's coming to like smash. I love that movie. I thought that was
It's
absolutely
amazing.
the best movie I've seen in recent memory. Because it's exactly what I would expect of exactly that event,
Yeah.
like
Don't look
at
up.
the time. Yeah. Um, but there's two ways you're going to change the world. One is you're going to wait for the meteor, the war, the global catastrophe, whatever the tornado, I don't know, earthquake, whatever it is. And then you're going to have women won't be able to afford feminism anymore. It's what Rob Henderson calls luxury beliefs. Feminism is a luxury belief.
Of course.
In third world countries, nobody gives a rat's ass about feminism. It's all about survival. And then you see the gender roles become what they are. And even in like countries like Scandinavian countries where there's supposed to be, ostensibly like egalitarian equalism, you'll still see men and women will opt for traditional, conventional gender roles. So, in a state of disaster, when the floodwaters start rising, that's one way you'll get rid of it. The only other way I can think of is each one tell one, and we have to be unapologetically masculine. We have to be unapologetically Men have to find some way to reclaim authority, and you're going to have to break some eggs to make that omelet. You're going to have to risk being offensive. And I will quote Jordan Peterson here: "You cannot think correctly unless you risk being offensive." And I have had to repeat that to Michaela Peterson, of all people, but other people as well. When they say Rollo sounds mean, he sounds like, it's true, but he sounds angry, or he offended me by telling me this truth. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I offended you, because that was my intent. My intent was to offend you, because the only way you're going to wake up and start thinking critically about these things is if you are shocked into awareness by being offended. So we have to be, talk about, enjoy the decline. Well, have fun, enjoy the decline. But the problem is eventually you're going to get to the bottom of the decline. And then what are you going to do? What happens when you get to, then I'm dead and I'm out. Bye. Well, okay. But what happens when, like, your son and your grandchild, we were just talking about it, your genetic line. Yeah. They're the result of you waiting for the, enjoying the decline, right? Well, they're screwed too. But I'm not a believer in enjoy the decline. I think that I'm probably maybe naively optimistic about this, but I think that we have the potential, we have the creative capacity to do this, to make something different. We can do it. Hell, if feminism can do it, like, men certainly can sack up and do it themselves. But the problem is they don't want to risk offense. And they don't want to the only way you are going to reclaim authority as a man is if you get offensive. If you don't, well, you're like, I'm not going to apologize to you. Here's where it is. Here's the facts. It's right in your face. And be willing to confront emotionalism with rationalism and empiricism and traditionalism in some cases, because that coincides with that. So you have to be able to be offensive. You have to be able to, men need to reclaim authority. That you will not solve the Lost Boy situation. You will not solve feminism. You will not counter gynocentrism until you give yourself permission and have the balls to reclaim authority, because it won't be given to you. Authority has to be earned, or it has to be taken. It has to be wrestled away from the person who has it, because anytime people give you authority, it's not legitimate. It always comes with strings, and it's always just enough to sort of placate you for whatever else, whatever they need you to do. Right. So
serve them.
You have to reassert, and you have to take authority back, because if you don't, and you don't risk offense, and you do it unapologetically, if you don't do that, then yes, we're just going to continue down this path.
Yeah. Regarding of being offensive, like, usually when people write me a comment on my channel, like that was so offensive, like that's really like, I said, like, man, welcome to my channel. That's
Good.
how
It
it
was
goes.
meant to be. Yeah, that's what I tell them.
You don't like it? Fuck off.
Well, Chris Williamson, like, was honestly, he's coming at me, but somebody asked him about, like, hey, when are you gonna have Rollo on? And then of course he's like, well, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about Rollo, because he sounds like he's gleeful. He sounds like he's happy that women are these unflattering facts, which are the same facts from the guys he's interviewing, like Rob Henderson and everyone at Jordan Peterson and everyone else. They're saying the same thing. I'm just connecting dots that they're unwilling to do, and that's offensive. Yeah. And so, yeah. He sounds like he's gleeful, or he's angry, or it's truthful anger, or whatever, and it's offensive. And I'm like, or he was like, I don't want to risk offending 50% of my audience. That's your problem. That's why you will fail. That's why you're a cuck. That's why you're a simp, Chris, because you are worried about that and not about expressing objective truth. And so, again, if you want to think correctly, you have to risk being offensive. So when people say, I'm offended by that, you're mean. Good. Because that's what it was meant to do.
You're welcome.
I'm not mean. I'm not offensive. Then you don't wake the fuck up.
Yeah. I piss people, like, for living,
Yeah.
Literally for living.
You do.
Like,
I'm not sure.
I have my blog, like, in September. In September 11 last year. It was like pure incidence, by the way, guys. I did not choose it. Like, I just I was doing development on the website, and like, it's done. Then I announced it, and people start to send me, you chose September 11. I said, what? Like, look at. Oh, really? It is September 11. Well, it is easy day to remember.
Oops.
I think.
My bad.
Yeah. So the website, my website will be available in English language. I have over than 50 article, like around 50 article in the
Mhm.
website, 50 blog. It will be available in English language, guys, like within, inshallah, 1 week maybe. It will be available in both English and Arabic languages, and you can book me for counseling through the website. You can find me on Zad Call application. It's a counseling application for experts from different categories. You will find me under the psychiatry. So we would like to thank Rollo. If you would like to advertise anything, Rollo, for the guys.
I will be on Rule Zero tomorrow on my channel, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
So that'll be at 11 a.m. Eastern or 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And so we got Rule Zero coming up, and then my main channel is 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. I will probably get into the Brittany Renner thing finally. So just you want some red meat,
Hmm.
you ask for it, you're gonna get it. I'll risk being offensive. And I saw people asking about the fifth book. Fifth book by the end of this month, possibly like the first week of February, depending on when Amazon approves it. So like there's an approval process that I have to wait. So once it's out of my hands, then that's kind of up to them.
Do
So
they read it?
oh yeah, they have proof. I don't know if they read the whole thing, but they're definitely
Okay.
proofread it. Like the last book that I religion took like almost 14 days to approve it. So
Hmm.
yeah, and it takes even longer to get approved an Audible book too. So that's what I got coming up. I will have some big news later on this week because I've got a really big interview that's coming up on February 8th. I'm not gonna say what it is right now, but I hate to do a tease, but that's I
Mhm.
can't say anything until the podcast that is hosting it starts doing promotion, and then I will do it. Then I'll start promoting it
Yeah,
myself.
so have to be confirmed. Yeah.
It's going to be a big deal. So I'm just saying, watch this space.
Well, that was like one of the most, and I enjoyed it a lot. This three
Thanks.
hours,
Yeah, it was a good
5 minutes.
conversation. I wasn't expecting going like more than 2 hours, but then I'm like, this is good. I think it's
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Like been with you with the Godfather himself, Rollo Tomassi. Thank you very much
been a pleasure. Been
for
an honor.
watching.
Kareem, thank
For
you.
watching. Thank you very much, bro. And thank you for watching, guys. Salamu alaikum. Have a nice day.